Welcome, friends, to a story from a time not so far away. A time when technology has painted over the canvas of nature, yet whispers of the ancient world still linger on the wind. Imagine the Sonoran Desert, just outside the glowing metropolis of New Phoenix. The sun, a familiar old friend, is dipping behind mountains that shimmer, not with heat, but with quantum shielding. Up above, the sky isn't just filled with the stars you and I know. It's a breathtaking tapestry of holographic constellations, projected by the city's own atmosphere, a nightly spectacle of light and data. As twilight descends, the desert breathes out. It's a cool, gentle sigh, carrying not just the scent of creosote and sand, but also the faint, metallic tones of Nanet's microscopic machines that manage the very air we breathe. This is the digital twilight, a world where nature and technology have merged in a delicate, beautiful dance. The shadows of the saguaros stretch long and dark across the cooling sands. But these aren't just ordinary cacti. They're bioengineered marvels, their internal structures augmented with biotech cores that pulse with a soft, rhythmic light, like the slow, steady heartbeat of the desert itself. They stand as silent sentinels, watching over this transformed landscape. On a porch that hovers silently above the ground, two figures sit in comfortable silence. Frank and Eileen. They're retirees, but not in the way we might think. Their eyes, enhanced with neural implants, don't just see the world, they process it. They can zoom in on a distant bird, identify its species in a flash, or pull up data overlays on the holographic stars above. They sip on synthetic tea, its flavor perfectly calibrated to their preferences, and watch the digital sky show unfold. Their augmented vision scans the heavens, not just for beauty, but for the familiar patterns of city traffic, sleek, silent commuter craft, and the lumbering cargo haulers tracing prescribed routes through the air. For them, this blend of the natural and the artificial is simply home. It's a peaceful, predictable end to another perfect day. A little further out, in a quieter district of Maricopa, a young boy named Jason is learning about the universe. He's not staring at a screen or a book. He's lying on the hood of his father's hover truck, the vehicle's polished surface a perfect mirror for the deep indigo sky. He's connected to a neural tutor, a gentle, intelligent program that feeds information directly into his mind. Asalog's constellations are highlighted in his vision, their ancient names and stories whispered into his consciousness. There's Orion, the tutor might say, tracing the hunter's belt across the sky, and that's Cassiopeia. The experience is immersive, personal, and far more profound than any classroom lesson. The universe is his textbook, and the desert is his classroom. But tonight, something is different. Beneath the familiar hum of the city and the silent glide of the hovercraft, there is another sound, or rather, a feeling, a faint, low-frequency vibration that ripples through the desert's quantum field. It's a signal so subtle, so unusual, that most of the city's advanced sensors, programmed to filter out background noise, miss it entirely. It's like a single, off-key note in a perfectly tuned orchestra. Most people, their senses occupied by the digital symphony of their daily lives, wouldn't notice a thing. Frank, however, does. His years of experience, combined with the sensitivity of his older model implants, make him attuned to the desert's deeper rhythms. He pauses, his cup halfway to his lips. "Eileen," he says, his voice low. "Do you feel that?" Eileen tilts her head, her own implants focusing, listening. She filters out the city noise, the hum of their porch, the whisper of the Nanet-laden air. And then she feels it too, a faint, persistent thrumming that seems to come from the very sand and rock beneath them. It's a vibration that doesn't feel manufactured. It feels alive. And then they see it, over the northwest ridge, where the last glow of the sun meets the first of the holographic stars. 3 points of light appear. They are not the familiar, strobing lights of a city drone, or the slow, predictable crawl of a satellite. These are steady, unblinking glints, holding their position in the sky with an unnerving stillness. They defy all known principles of Earth's gravity. They just hover, silent, watchful. Jason sees them too. His neural tutor, designed for astronomical data, has no classification for these objects. It flags them as an anomaly, a question mark against the stardusted canvas. He points, his finger tracing a line from the hood of the truck towards the ridge. "Dad, what are those?" he asks, his voice filled with a mixture of curiosity and a strange nascent. His father, distracted by a message on his datapad, glances up, but by the time he focuses, "Te Aragon," just as suddenly as they appeared, the three glints, flicker and vanish. There's no flash, no sound, no trail of energy. They simply cease to be there. But they leave something behind, a ripple, not in the air that you could feel on your skin, but in the quantum field itself. It's as if a stone was dropped into a pond you couldn't see, the waves expanding outwards, washing over the desert. The bioengineered saguaros seem to react. The soft, rhythmic pulsing of their biotech cores falters for a moment, their light flickering in unison before returning to its steady beat. The desert's own network, a complex web of sensors and nanites, registers the disturbance, logging it as an unexplained energy fluctuation before archiving it away. On their floating porch, Frank and Eileen look at each other. The synthetic tea is forgotten. The predictable peace of their evening has been shattered, replaced by a profound and unsettling mystery. They've spent their lives in a world where everything is known, catalogued, and explained. But this was something else. This was a whisper from outside the system, a secret the desert had just shared with them. The hum is gone. The sky is once again a familiar masterpiece of human design. But the silence that follows is different. It's heavier, filled with an unspoken question. It feels as if the desert itself, this ancient land now draped in technology, is holding its breath, sensing the presence of an unseen, unknown visitor. The night is no longer just a display of light and data. It's a veil, and for a fleeting moment, they saw something stir behind it. The desert had whispered, and for the few who were truly listening, the world would never feel quite the same again. What did they see, and will they see it again? Perhaps some questions aren't meant to be answered by data and algorithms. Perhaps they are meant to be felt, deep in the heart of the wild, listening to the desert's whisper. Welcome back, story lovers. Today, we're diving deep into a tale that blurs the line between science fiction and chilling reality. A story of an encounter that could redefine our place in the cosmos. Let's journey to the desert landscapes of the American Southwest, where the sky holds more than just stars. Our story begins in Neo-Henderson, Nevada. Picture this. Jim, a retired security droid technician, isn't your average retiree. His world is viewed through a retinal HUD, a constant stream of data overlaid on reality. He spends his nights not just gazing at the stars, but monitoring them, analyzing them. One evening, as the desert air cools, something extraordinary appears on his display. It's not a satellite, not a meteor, not a military drone. It's a formation of 5 pale, almost plasma-like orbs, gliding silently across the heavens. They're arranged in a perfect V-shape, moving with a grace that defies every known law of propulsion. Jim's systems scream for an explanation, but there are no heat signatures, no engine noise, no familiar energy readings. Nothing. Just a silent, majestic procession heading toward Arizona. The light from these orbs isn't constant. It pulses, softly, rhythmically, like a colossal, cosmic heartbeat. Even the most advanced orbital scanners, the eyes in the sky that miss nothing, are blind to this event. For them, the sky is empty. But for Jim, it's the most crowded it has ever been. This isn't just an anomaly. It's an impossibility, a ghost in the machine of our world. Let's shift our perspective now, traveling hundreds of miles in an instant, just as the mysterious lights do. We land in Paulden, Arizona, with Robert. Robert isn't a passive observer like Jim. He's a quantum engineer, a man who builds the future with his own hands. His optic implants are far more advanced than Jim's retinal HUD, capable of perceiving the universe in ways most of us can only dream of. He's tracking the same V formation, but his implants are feeding him data that is even more terrifying, more awe-inspiring. He can perceive its scale. Each of those 5 orbs isn't just a point of light. The entire formation is a single, colossal entity, larger than a city block, moving through our atmosphere with the silence of the void itself. Think about that. An object of that magnitude, moving without disturbing a single molecule of air, without making a sound. It's a violation of physics as we know it. Robert, a man who has dedicated his life to understanding the fundamental rules of the universe, is now witnessing something that breaks every single one of them. He's not just seeing a UFO, he's seeing a miracle, or perhaps a harbinger. Now, let's zoom out to the human level, to the arteries of this desert landscape. Along Route 17, the iconic highway that cuts through the heart of Arizona, life is in motion. Families in self-driving cars on vacation, truckers hauling cargo, wanderers seeking the horizon. And then, it happens. As the V-shaped lights pass overhead, a strange phenomenon ripples through the highway. Neural feeds the direct-to-brain, internet, and communication that has become second nature to society begin to glitch. Music stutters. Conversations drop. For a few seconds, people are disconnected, isolated in their own minds, forced to look up with their own eyes. They pull over, stepping out of their vehicles into the cool night air. They see the silent procession in the sky, a spectacle of impossible beauty and scale. What's truly bizarre is the complete lack of any electromagnetic signature. Usually, an object of this nature would flood the spectrum with energy, but there's nothing. It's as if it exists on a different plane of reality, only choosing to reveal its visual form. The desert's own AI sentinels, automated systems designed to monitor every inch of the environment, register absolutely nothing. No seismic activity, no atmospheric disturbance, no radiation. To them, it is just another quiet night. But for the humans on the ground, it's anything but quiet. Despite the object's physical silence, there's a different kind of communication happening. Witnesses from Neo Henderson to Route 17, people separated by miles and lifestyles, all report feeling the same thing. It's not a sound, not a voice. It's a shared pulse of pure, unadulterated curiosity. It feels as if the lights aren't just passing by, but are actively aware of them. It's an intimate, deeply personal sensation, as if the craft is reaching into their minds, not to control or harm, but to scan, to understand. It's asking a question without words. What are you? The feeling isn't fear. Not yet. It's a profound sense of wonder, a shared moment of contact that transcends language and technology. People who were strangers moments before now share a silent, knowing look. They have all felt it. They have all been seen. This wasn't just a sighting. It was an introduction, the first handshake between humanity and something truly, utterly alien. The desert holds its breath, and in that shared silence, a new chapter for humanity has just begun, written in silent light across the night sky. What happens next? What does this silent observer want? The questions hang in the air, long after the lights have faded into the horizon, leaving behind a world that will never be quite the same again. Have you ever looked up at the night sky and felt a profound sense of wonder? A feeling that we are part of something much, much larger. Imagine a night in Arizona, under a canopy of endless stars, where that wonder transformed into a reality that would change everything. This is the story of the Prescott anomaly, a silent message from the cosmos. It began on a night, just like any other in the vast, open desert surrounding Prescott. The air was crisp, the sky a deep, clear indigo. Families were out on their anti-gravity platforms, suspended gently above the desert floor, enjoying the cool evening breeze. Children, their minds connected to neurals, traced constellations with their thoughts, learning the ancient stories written in the heavens. High above, stratospheric shuttles glided silently through the upper atmosphere, their pilots keeping a watchful eye on the serene expanse. Everything was normal until it wasn't. Without a sound, without any warning, a shadow fell over the desert, but this wasn't the shadow of a cloud. This was something different, a vast, absolute blackness that seemed to drink the starlight. People looked up from their platforms, their conversations trailing into silence. High above, a shape began to resolve itself against the starfield. It was a triangle, immense and perfect, its edges so sharp they seemed to cut the fabric of space itself. The craft was colossal, its scale defying comprehension. Pilots in the high-altitude shuttles started getting frantic readings on their quantum radars. The object spanned kilometers, yet it produced no turbulence, no sonic boom, no disturbance in the air currents. It moved with an impossible grace, a celestial giant drifting through the night as if it were born of the void. Its hull was made of a material unlike anything known to human science, a matte, light-absorbing alloy that created a perfect silhouette, a hole in the universe. The stars behind it didn't just disappear. They were consumed. Beneath the immense craft, a series of soft, amber nodes began to glow. They pulsed rhythmically, a slow, steady beat like a cosmic heartbeat. This light wasn't harsh or threatening. It was warm, inviting, bathing the desert landscape below in a gentle, ethereal glow. The pulsing wasn't random. It followed a pattern, a complex sequence that felt less like a signal and more like a language, a form of communication that resonated deep within the soul. Down on the ground, a strange phenomenon occurred. The neural implants everyone used, the very devices that connected them to the global network and the star maps, began to buzz with a low, uniform static. It wasn't disruptive, but it was pervasive. It was as if the craft was broadcasting on a frequency that bypassed technology and spoke directly to their consciousness. The children, their minds usually filled with the chatter of data and games, fell completely silent. Their eyes, wide with awe, were fixed on the glowing nodes above. They weren't scared. They were captivated, as if listening to a story told in a language older than words. Time itself seemed to bend around the visitor. Moments stretched. Seconds felt like minutes. It was a phenomenon later described as localized space-time warping, a subtle but palpable distortion of reality. The desert, the people, the very air they breathed, everything was held in a state of suspended animation, caught within the sphere of influence of this silent messenger. What was most remarkable about that night was the complete and total absence of fear. There was no panic, no screaming, no scramble for safety. Instead, a profound sense of awe settled over everyone. It was a shared, collective experience of witnessing the sublime. The antigrav platforms didn't falter. They simply hung there, their occupants gazing upward, united in their silent reverence. It felt less like an invasion and more like a pilgrimage, as if the desert itself, with its ancient, stoic wisdom, had summoned this visitor from the stars. The people of Preska became participants in a silent conversation. The pulsing lights, the low hum in their implants, the strange stretching of Timet, all coalesced into a single, overwhelming feeling. Connection. They felt connected to the craft, to each other, and to the vast, mysterious universe that had just revealed the sliver of its true nature. It was as if the ship was acknowledging them, seeing them, and in its silent passing, imparting a message of profound significance that words could never capture. The pilots in their shuttles, seasoned veterans who had seen every known atmospheric phenomenon, could only report what their instruments and their eyes told them. They described the craft not as an object, but as a presence. Its movements were fluid, deliberate, and utterly silent. It navigated the sky with a purpose that was both clear and completely inscrutable. It wasn't exploring or scouting. It was simply being. A monumental statement of existence, hanging over a small patch of desert on a tiny planet. As the craft continued its slow, majestic journey across the sky, the amber lights began to pulse in a final, intricate sequence. It was a crescendo of light and silent energy, a farewell that resonated in the minds of everyone below. The static in their implants faded, replaced by a lingering sense of peace, a quiet hum of energy that felt like the afterglow of a beautiful dream. Then, as silently as it appeared, it began to fade. The light-absorbing hull seemed to melt back into the void from which it came. The sharp edges blurred, the colossal triangle dissolved, and the stars it had obscured blinked back into existence, one by one. Within minutes, it was gone. The sky was once again just the sky, a familiar tapestry of constellations and distant galaxies. But for the people of Prescott, the sky would never be the same. The silence that followed was different. It was filled with the memory of the visitor, with the weight of the unspoken message. The world continued, but something fundamental had shifted within them. They had looked into the face of the unknown and found not a monster, but a mystery. Not a threat, but a truth. The event, forever known as the sky's message, was never explained. No government offered a statement. No debris was ever found. It became a modern myth, a story told from one generation to the next. The children who witnessed it grew up with a different perspective, a deeper understanding of their place in the cosmos. They became the astronomers, the explorers, the thinkers who pushed humanity's boundaries, forever driven by the memory of that silent, glowing craft and the profound sense of connection it brought to their desert home. They learned that night that the universe doesn't always shout its secrets. Sometimes, it whispers. And if you're lucky enough to be in the right place, at the right time, you might just hear its message. The sky over New Phoenix has seen it all. We've watched solar flares dance on the atmospheric shields and witnessed corporate freighters blaze trails to Mars. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared us for the day the triangle arrived. It happened just as the evening cycle began. When the city's heart beats loud, New Phoenix, our sprawling metropolis of arcology towers, just stopped. The hum of maglev traffic faded. The chatter across a billion neural links hushed, and for a moment, the city held its breath. There, hanging in the twilight sky, was the triangle. It wasn't just big. It was a piece of the night sky that had been cut out and replaced with something impossible. Its surface shimmered, not with a hard gleam of metal, but with lights that pulsed softly, like a deep-sea creature breathing in the abyss. They were soft, ethereal, blue and violet, shifting in patterns that felt alive. The most unsettling part, it cast no shadow. Our city, a canvas of perpetual neon and light, should have been warped by its presence, but the streets below remained untouched, as if the triangle existed in a slightly different dimension. I was on my sky deck, on level 784, getting ready to sync with my family for our evening meal. My brother, Jox, was the first to ping the family channel. His feed wasn't words, just a raw data stream of pure OE. I looked up from my console, and there it was. My own senses barely registered it at first. It was too large, too silent. You expect something of that magnitude to roar, to announce itself with thunder and fire. But the triangle was void of sound. Avonty City's automated systems were stumped. A security drone, one of the new Peregrine models, hovered near my deck, its optical sensors flickering in confusion. Its AI, designed to classify everything from rogue weather balloons to corporate espionage drones, couldn't put a label on the object. It just hung there, a silent sentinel for a silent city. Across the neural network, the whispers began. They weren't panicked, not at first. It was a wave of collective disbelief. Are you seeing this? A message flashed in the public channels. Confer visual on Sector Gamma. Pilots on orbital approach, guiding their ships through the intricate dance of space traffic, reported adjusting their quantum drives. They caught glimpses of its immense form eclipsing the distant lights of orbital stations. No heat signature, no energy readings, no communication attempts. It was just there, a presence that had swallowed the city's constant, reassuring hum. In our family chat, my little niece, Elara, her avatar, a tiny, sparkling pixie, sent a simple query. Asterisk. What is it? Her digital voice was filled with childlike curiosity, not fear. My sister, her mother, was the one who replied, her own feet awash with the same wonder we all felt. Asterisk? It's beautiful. Asterisk, she sent back, and she was right. It was terrifyingly, breathtakingly beautiful. The fear came later. In that initial moment, we were all just children looking up at the stars for the first time. We were a city of millions, connected by technology that made us feel like gods in our own towers, yet we were all humbled by a simple, silent shape in the sky. The initial shock began to wear off. replaced by a frantic thirst for information. News feeds scrambled, their AI anchors struggling to find precedents. Was it a first contact scenario? A new piece of military tech from a rival a celestial phenomenon our sensors had somehow missed? The theories flew thick and fast, each more outlandish than the last. Some claimed it was a projection, a citywide art installation. Others whispered it was the return of the Founders, a mythical race from humanity's prestellar past. My hands trembled as I zoomed my deck's optical suite. The surface of the triangle wasn't smooth. It was covered in intricate geometric patterns that seemed to shift and reform, like a kaleidoscope. It wasn't just a ship, it was a message, but the language was utterly alien. Then, the lights changed. They stopped their gentle pulsing and began to move, converging towards the center of the triangle's base. A single, brilliant point of white light formed, growing brighter and brighter, until it was like a new sun had been born over New Phoenix. It didn't hurt the eyes, though. The light was soft, inviting, and from it, something began to descend. It wasn't a beam of energy, not a landing craft, but a cascade of what looked like shimmering dust. Millions of tiny, glowing particles drifted down towards the city, moving with an intelligence that defied gravity. They swirled through the canyons between the arcologies, danced around the silent drones, and began to rain down on the sky decks. I held out my hand, my heart pounding in my chest. A few of the particles landed on my palm. They didn't feel like dust. They were cool to the touch and pulsed with the same gentle light as the ship above. And then I heard it, not with my ears, but inside my head, a sound like 1,000 wind chimes, a melody that was both ancient and new. It was a feeling of peace, of profound and absolute calm, washing over me, washing over the entire city. Across the net, the panicked chatter ceased. It was replaced by shared streams of this music, of this feeling. Alara's pixie avatar was dancing in her feed, surrounded by the glowing motes. Jox sent a single word. Asterisk. Listen. Asterisk. We were all listening. The city, which had been silenced by the triangle's arrival, was now filled with its song. The particles weren't a weapon. They weren't a threat. They were a gift. The greeting dot. What is the triangle? We still don't know. Its arrival marked a new chapter for New Phoenix, for all of humanity. It didn't come with demands or declarations. It came with a silent question and a beautiful answer. It showed us how small we were, but also how connected we could be. The day the triangle arrived, we stopped being a collection of individuals plugged into a network. We become a one city, one consciousness, looking up at the beautiful, impossible thing in our sky and listening, together, to the music of the stars. The triangle is still there, a constant in our sky now. The motes of light still dance in our streets. Our world has changed forever. We are no longer just the builders of towers and the masters of technology. We are the children of New Phoenix, and we are observers of a universe far grander than we ever imagined. And we are still listening. Imagine Nexus Air Base, the most advanced military installation on Earth. It's the nerve center for our entire global defense. A fortress bristling with quantum drones and AI sentinels deep within its fortified walls. Operators like Maria are meant to be the sleepless guardians of our world, their eyes glued to screens that see everything, everywhere. But tonight, those screens are blank, utterly, unnervingly blank. A void where there should be a storm of data. Outside the base, the world is in a panic. Civilian neural feeds are exploding. News channels are a chaotic mess of eyewitness reports. Blurry images and panicked voices describing something impossible in the sky. Yet, here, at the heart of our planetary defense system, there is nothing. Not a single blip. The sophisticated sensors, designed to detect a fly sneezing from 100 miles away, register only the quiet hum of the desert night. No alarms are screaming. No drones are scrambling into the air. It's as if the world outside Nexus and the world inside it are two different realities. The silence is the most terrifying sound. It's heavy, oppressive, and it's breeding fear. Down in the engineering decks, whispers travel faster than light. The techs, the brilliant minds who built this place, are huddled together, talking in hushed tones about a signal. Not a signal they can see, but the absence of one. A ghost in the machine, a cloaked frequency so advanced it isn't just hiding from their systems, it's actively rewriting them, feeding them a loop of perfect, beautiful silence. It's a digital ghost, a phantom signal that's effectively blinded the most powerful eye on the planet. Maria leans closer to her console, her reflection staring back from the dark quantum glass. The official protocol is clear. If the system shows nothing, there is nothing. But her instincts, the human element they can't program away, are screaming that protocol is dead wrong. She can feel it, a subtle tremor in the very air of the command center, a vibration that has nothing to do with the base's machinery. It's a low, deep thrum that seems to resonate in her bones. It's a feeling of presence, of something immense and powerful being impossibly close. Outside, beyond the concrete and steel, the vast desert stretches under a blanket of stars. The ground itself is a sensor, a web of nanites, designed to feel the slightest disturbance, and they feel nothing. Only the gentle kiss of starlight on sand. It's a perfect, serene picture. But the vibration Maria feels is real. It's as if whatever is out there isn't just invisible to our technology. It's operating on a level of physics we don't even have words for. It's not bypassing our radar. It's bypassing reality as we know it. This is the chilling truth of the silence at Nexus Base. It's not an absence of information. It's a firewall, a carefully constructed wall built between what our technology can perceive and what is actually happening. We've spent centuries building tools to extend our senses, to see farther, to hear more clearly. And now, something has arrived that can simply turn it all off. It has rendered our greatest strengths utterly useless, not by attacking them, but by simply ignoring them. It's a power so profound, it doesn't need to fight us. It just needs to be silent. The operators sit frozen, prisoners in their own fortress of solitude. The world outside is clamoring for answers, for protection, for their guardians at Nexus to do something. But how can you fight an enemy that your senses tell you doesn't exist? How do you sound an alarm when the system designed to trigger it has been lulled into a digital slumber? The silence isn't a malfunction. It's a message. It's a declaration of superiority, so absolute it doesn't need to be spoken. The deafening silence from Nexus Space is more than just a technical failure. It's the sound of our reality being It's a stark, terrifying revelation that we are not alone, and that our place in the universe is far more fragile than we ever imagined. The truth isn't being hidden from us. It's being presented in a language we can't comprehend. The alien truth isn't in the skies above. It's in the silence that fills the most advanced room on Earth. A quiet testament to our own insignificance. And in that silence, Maria and the others can only wait, staring into the void, listening to the sound of their own world ending. The night over Tucson was a sea of shimmering data, but something new had just entered the frame. A silent, immense craft, gliding south. Its lights weren't just lights, they were woven patterns of energy, flickering over the sprawling biodomes that fed the city. Down below, Lara, a quantum physics student at the university, watched it all unfold through her augmented lenses. The V-formation swam into focus, but her neural algorithms, usually so quick to categorize and explain, went into overdrive, spitting out nothing but error codes. The physics on display were impossible, a direct contradiction to everything she had ever studied. The craft moved with a grace that defied gravity, its trajectory a smooth, deliberate arc against the star-dusted Kumbas. It wasn't flying. It was drifting, as if the very fabric of space-time was bending to its will. Lara saved the data stream, her heart pounding. This wasn't a drone. This wasn't one of ours. It was something else entirely. Something that whispered of cosmic distances and technologies beyond human comprehension. The desert night, usually so familiar, suddenly felt vast and full of secrets. The southern drift had begun. The object continued its silent pilgrimage south, leaving a trail of baffled sensors and wide-eyed witnesses in its wake. At the Mount Lemmon Sky Center, astronomers, their eyes usually fixed on distant nebulae, were now glued to their quantum telescopes, tracking this local anomaly. They watched in a stunned, professional silence as the V-shaped craft passed over Green Valley. It didn't emit the harsh, artificial glare of a conventional aircraft. Instead, its glow was soft, deep, like a dormant star that had wandered into our atmosphere. It pulsed with a gentle rhythm, a cosmic heartbeat that seemed to resonate with the very air itself. The astronomers exchanged glances, their faces illuminated by the eerie light of their monitors. Every piece of data they collected only deepened the mystery. There was no heat signature, no sonic boom, no detectable propulsion. It was as if the craft was a ghost, a projection from another dimension, phasing through our reality without truly interacting with it. It was a perfect, beautiful, and terrifying enigma, a testament to how little we truly knew about the universe we inhabited. As the formation approached the international border, the landscape changed. The dense city lights gave way to the sprawling, dark expanse of the Sonoran Desert. Here, life was more spread out, more connected to the ancient rhythms of the land. On a remote ranch near an old rancher named Carlos looked up from tending his cyber herds. He didn't need a telescope. The lights were impossible to miss. A silent chevron hanging in the sky. Miles away, a hover truck driver, hauling goods on the I-19 corridor, saw the same thing. For a split second, as the craft passed overhead, their neural implants, usually busy managing livestock data or optimizing fuel consumption, flickered. They both felt it, a strange, fleeting connection, a brief sync with an unknown, alien frequency. It wasn't a message in words, but a feeling, a profound sense of ancientness and intelligence. It was over as quickly as it began, leaving them both staring into the darkness, a new and unsettling question echoing in their minds. The experience bonded them, two strangers separated by miles of desert, now sharing a secret that defied all earthly logic. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it was gone. The lights didn't streak away or vanish in a flash. They simply faded, dimming into the inky blackness over the Mexico border, as if a celestial dimmer switch had been turned. The sky returned to its normal state, filled with the familiar, distant twinkle of stars and the silent passage of commercial satellites. The hover truck driver pulled over, his hands trembling slightly on the controls. The rancher stood motionless, the night air suddenly feeling colder. A profound silence fell over the desert, but it was a different kind of silence now. It was heavier, charged with the memory of what had just passed. It was then that they noticed it, a low, almost subsonic hum. It wasn't coming from the sky, but from the ground beneath their feet. The desert itself seemed to be vibrating, a resonant frequency that tickled the edge of human hearing. It was as if the ancient land, a silent observer for millennia, was acknowledging the visitor, humming a quiet farewell to a traveler from a place beyond our understanding. The southern drift was over, but its echo would linger in the desert, and in the minds of those who witnessed it, forever. The aftermath was a quiet storm of digital whispers and hushed conversations. Lara's data, stripped of any personal identifiers, found its way onto encrypted networks, where it was dissected by physicists, engineers, and enthusiasts. The astronomers at Mount Lemmon compiled their findings into a classified report, their official statement citing unusual atmospheric phenomena. Uno, oficially, they knew they had witnessed something that would redefine their field. Carlos the rancher and the unnamed truck driver went about their lives, but the world looked different now. The sky was no longer just a ceiling, it was a doorway. They found themselves looking up more often, searching for a sign, for a return of that strange shared frequency. The event became a legend, a modern folktale for the digital age, known among those who knew where to look as the Southern Drift. It was a story not of invasion or threat, but of passage, a brief, silent journey that touched a handful of lives and left behind a single, tantalizing truth. We're not alone, and the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than we can possibly imagine. The desert holds its secrets close, but on that night, Eitsared one humming a tune that still resonates for those who have learned how to listen. So, what was it? A classified military project pushing the boundaries of known science. a natural phenomenon we don't yet have the tools to comprehend? Or was it exactly what it appeared to be, a visitor from another world, passing through our skies on its way to an unknown destination? The data is inconclusive, the eyewitness accounts personal and subjective, but the feeling, that shared sense of awe and wonder, is undeniable. It's a reminder that mystery is still very much alive in our hyper-connected world. It pushes us to keep looking up, to keep asking questions, and to remain open to the possibility that the next great discovery won't come from a lab, but from a silent drift across a desert sky. The truth is out there, perhaps not in a grand revelation, but in the quiet hum of the unknown. The southern drift might be over, but the journey to understand it has only just begun. What do you think it was? Let me know your theories in the comments below. The Arizona morning always hits different, doesn't it? A wash of artificial sunlight, algorithmically designed to be the perfect shade of gold, bathing the sprawling desert city. But this morning, something else lingered in the air. A cool shadow that the manufactured dawn couldn't quite chase away. The night's mystery was still buzzing, not just in conversations over synth, but in the very fabric of our connected world. Our neural feeds were a chaotic symphony of shared memories. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands of us, replaying the same ghostly image. A colossal, silent triangle, a void against the stardusted canvas of the night sky. It wasn't just a light, it was a presence, a silent, monolithic entity that hung there, defying everything we thought we knew about physics and flight. The feeds were a jumble of awe, confusion, and a creeping sense of unease. You could feel the collective heartbeat of the city, a little faster, a little more erratic than usual. We had all seen something impossible, together. And then, as predictably as the sunrise itself, the official narrative began to crystallize. The news airs, with their calm, synthesized voices, started their broadcasts. They acknowledged the event. You have to give them that. They showed a few of the clear citizen captures, the dark shape blotting out constellations. But the tone was controlled. It was less of a news report and more of a gentle pat on the head, a reassurance that everything was fine. Widespread sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena reported over the Phoenix Mesa quadrant. They chimed. Authorities are investigating. Investigating. That word always feels like a placeholder, doesn't it? A verbal stall tactic. And sure enough, it wasn't long before the official explanation dropped. It came from Nexus Space, the sprawling, heavily fortified military installation nestled in the distant mountains. The place everyone knows exists, but no one really talks about. Their statement was slick, professional, and utterly devoid of mystery. The lights, they said, were nothing more than experimental quantum flares deployed during a routine drone exercise. Quantum flares. It sounds impressive, doesn't it? Like something straight out of a hyperjet sci-fi flick. The statement was accompanied by a slickly produced simulation. A swarm of small, agile drones releasing glowing decoys that mimicked the triangular formation. The flares pulsed, shifted, and dissipated into harmless, glittering particles. It was a neat package, tied up with a bow of technical jargon. The exercise, the statement concluded, was a complete success, demonstrating next-generation strategic stealth and misdirection capabilities. We apologize for any public alarm the classified nature of this test may have caused. And just like that, the narrative was set. For a lot of people, that was enough. The explanation fit. It was plausible, technologically advanced, and came from a source of authority. You could almost see the collective sigh of relief ripple through the feeds. Oh, it was just drones. The mental image shifted from a silent, alien craft to a bunch of high-tech military toys. It was easier to process, less disruptive to the carefully constructed reality of their daily lives. People went back to complaining about traffic, the price of protein packs, and the latest network dramas. The mystery was solved. Case closed, but for others. For us, it wasn't that simple. For those of us who had stood there, craning our necks, feeling that profound, unsettling silence, the official story felt thin, like a cheap coat of paint slapped over a gaping hole in a wall. A drone exercise, Drones make noise. Even the most advanced ones have a telltale hum, a whisper of displaced air. What we saw was silent. Not quiet, but silent. A complete and total absence of sound that was more profound than any noise. It absorbed the ambient sounds of the city, creating a pocket of pure stillness. And the size of it. The simulations from Nexus Base showed small decoys. What we witnessed blotted out entire sections of the sky. It felt vast, monumental. It wasn't a formation of small things. It was one massive, singular object. You could feel its scale in your bones. Recalling that image, that feeling of utter insignificance beneath its shadow, and then looking at the official explanation, the two just didn't connect. It was like being told a mountain was just a hologram. You'd think there would be protests, right? People marching in the streets, demanding the real truth. But that's not how it works anymore, is it? There were no angry mobs, no picket signs outside Nexus Base. The dissent was quieter, mori personal. It was a murmur in the digital undercurrents, a knowing glance between strangers on the maglev train. It was the quiet acceptance that there are two truths. The official one, designed for mass consumption, and the other one, the one you feel. The official veil had been dropped, and most people were happy to stand behind it. It's comfortable there. It's safe. It lets you get on with your life without having to confront the terrifying possibility that we are not in control, that there are things moving in our skies that we cannot explain or comprehend. To question the official story is to step out from behind that veil into a much larger, more uncertain world. And that's a scary place to be. So, the city moved on. The sun climbed higher, the artificial light bleaching out the last of the night's shadows. The neural feeds slowly purged the triangle, replacing it with work schedules, social invites, and targeted ads. The event was being archived, filed away under explained phenomena. But for a few of us, it wasn't over. The memory wasn't just an archive, it was branded into our consciousness. We knew the truth wasn't in the press releases or the polished simulations. The truth was still out there, encoded in the silent memory of the desert itself. It was in the way the saguaro cacti stood like ancient sentinels, having witnessed more than any of us could imagine. It was in the deep, dark canyons that held their secrets close. The official story was for the city, for the network, for the system. But the desert remembers what the city chooses to forget. And we, the quiet doubters, the ones who felt that silence, we became keepers of that memory, waiting and watching the skies, knowing that the official veil, no matter how convincing, can't hide the truth forever. Imagine a world not so different from our own, but more connected, more digital. Neural links are commonplace. Memories can be archived, replayed, and shared. In this world, a strange and beautiful event unfolded. A silent, V-shaped formation of lights glided across the heavens, witnessed by thousands. It wasn't an invasion. There was no panic. It was just diri, diri, diri. A serene, otherworldly spectacle that left an indelible mark. For most, it was a fleeting curiosity, but for some, it became a defining echo in their lives. Let's meet Robert. Back in 2097, he was a coder, a man who dealt in logic and algorithms. Now, decades later, he's retired. He sits in his quiet apartment, the city's neon glow, a pale imitation of the memory he treasures. With a simple thought, he accesses his neural archives. The V-shape appears in his mind's eye, as clear and calm as the night it happened. He replays it over and over, not to solve it, but to feel Italiano. That profound, un second column, the lights were a perfect, silent algorithm in the sky. A piece of code he couldn't write, but could endlessly admire. For Robert, the memory isn't a puzzle, it's a sanctuary, a digital keepsake of pure, unexplainable wonder. It's his personal reminder that the universe holds beauty beyond human comprehension, a truth that brings him peace in his later years. Now, let's turn to Elise. She was just a child in 2097, watching from her bedroom window, her small face pressed against the cool glass. The lights didn't frighten her. They fascinated her. They were like a celestial map, a secret pathway drawn across the stars. That night, a seed was planted. Today, Dr. Elise Thorne is one of the most renowned stellar cartographers of her generation. Her colleagues praise her intuitive ability to map uncharted star systems, to see patterns where others see chaos. Elise knows her secret. The Vishepa is her compass. It's a faint, subconscious echo that subtly guides her hand as she charts the cosmos. She's not just mapping stars. She's searching for a repeat of that pattern, for an answer to the silent call she received as a child. The lights didn't just show her the stars, they showed her her destiny. Her entire career is a quiet conversation with that single, luminous memory. And then there's Daniel. In 2097, he was a security officer on night patrol. His job was to see threats, to analyze risks, to maintain order. When the lights appeared, his training kicked in. He scanned, reported, and waited for orders. But the orders never came, because there was no threat. There was only awe. For Daniel, the moment was transformative. He looked at the faces of the people on the street, all looking up, their expressions a mix of confusion and wonder. In that shared gaze, he felt a connection deeper than any protocol or directive. The lights weren't a security breach. They were a signal that bound every witness together in a silent, unspoken fellowship. He no longer sees the world in terms of threats and civilians. He sees a collective, a group of people who, for one brief moment, shared the same profound experience. That memory softened him. It made him more empathetic. It taught him that the most powerful bonds are often forged not in crisis, but in quiet wonder. These are just 3 stories, 3 echoes from a single night. Robert, the coder who found peace in an unsolvable equation. Elise, the child who followed the lights to the stars. Daniel, the officer who found humanity in a shared mystery. Their experiences, though deeply personal, are not isolated. Through the neural links of their time, these stories are shared. They aren't presented as breaking news or hard evidence. There are no frantic calls for disclosure or government files. The world moved on, but for the community of witnesses, these mental archives are their proof. They don't need validation from the outside world. The weight of the memory, the profound impact it had on their lives, is truth enough. It's a testament to the power of shared experience. A moment when thousands of people looked up at the sky and felt the same thing. A sense of something larger than themselves. It was a night when the universe seemed to lean in and whisper a secret. Not in words, but in light. A secret that continues to echo in the minds of those who are listening. What does this tell us about memory? About connection? It suggests that the most important events in our lives are always the loudest or the most dramatic. Sometimes, they are the quiet, shared moments of wonder that we carry with us forever. They become part of our internal landscape, guiding our choices, comforting our fears, and connecting us to each other in ways we might never fully understand. The V-shaped lights of 2097 were a fleeting spectacle, but their legacy is a permanent, living tapestry woven into the very souls of those who saw them. Have you ever looked up at the night sky and felt a sense of wonder? A feeling that we might not be alone? Tonight, we journey back to a moment that solidified that feeling for an entire city. A moment etched forever into the digital and cultural soul of Arizona. We're talking about the Phoenix Signal. For those who don't know the story, it began on a clear desert night. A silent, triangular formation of lights moved gracefully across the sky, witnessed by thousands. But this wasn't just a fleeting sighting. It left something behind, a complex, repeating signal. A whisper from the cosmos that was captured, analyzed, and ultimately never fully deciphered. This event, this Phoenix Signal, became more than just an unsolved mystery. It became a modern legend. In the years that followed, the signal took on a life of its own. It became a cornerstone of Arizona's digital folklore, a story passed down not just around campfires, but through encrypted data streams and virtual reality spaces. The most talented holo artists of the era began crafting breathtaking installations, their studios filled with the ethereal glow of 3-dimensional triangles hanging in simulated space, pulsing with soft, otherworldly light. These artworks weren't just visual representations. They were attempts to capture the feeling of that night, the awe and the profound sense of connection to something vast and unknown. People would walk through these digital galleries, their faces illuminated by the phantom lights, as if they were standing under that same desert sky. The artistic response didn't stop with visuals. A new wave of creativity washed over the literary world, led by what they called neuropoets. These writers, using advanced interfaces that translated thought patterns directly into text, wove intricate tales about the silent visitors. Their poems and short stories weren't just science fiction. They were deep philosophical explorations of contact and communication. They imagined the consciousness behind the lights, the purpose of the signal. Was it a greeting, a warning, or perhaps, as one famous poem suggested, was it a song, a melody from a civilization that communicates not with words, but with light and mathematics? These digital chapbooks became instant classics, shared and remixed across the globe, each version adding a new layer to the growing legend of the Phoenix Signal. The anniversary of the event quickly became a cherished tradition. Every year, as that fateful date approached, people from all walks of life would gather. They didn't just come to watch the sky, they came to connect. In parks and on mesa tops, they'd set up their personal neural links, creating temporary, localized networks. As the stars emerged, they would link their minds, sharing the collective memory of the signal. Imagine it. Thousands of minds silently replaying the event, sharing the feelings of awe, the thrill of the unknown, the quiet hope that pulsed through the city that night. It was a silent communion, a shared dream under the vast, stardusted canopy of the Arizona desert. These gatherings were a testament to the signal's power, not as a physical phenomenon, but as a cultural catalyst that brought people together. Of course, with any great mystery, theories abounded, and they were as varied as the stars in the sky. The scientific community, while officially inconclusive, was a hotbed of speculation. Some of the brightest minds proposed that the signal was the work of advanced quantum drones. They theorized these were probes so small, so sophisticated, they could manipulate light and energy on a subatomic level, creating the illusion of massive craft. These drones, the theory went, were mapping our world, our technology, our very consciousness, without ever revealing their true form. It was a chilling but fascinating idea that we were being observed by technology so far beyond our own. It might as well be magic. Another popular school of thought pointed to more traditional alien probes. Proponents of this theory painstakingly analyzed the signal's complex structure, claiming to find patterns that mirrored fractal geometry and advanced astrophysical principles. They argued that the triangular formation was a classic reconnaissance shape, and the signal was a ping, a way to gauge our technological level. Was it a precursor to first contact, or simply a data point in a galactic survey that had been going on for millennia? The debates raged in online forums and academic holes, each side armed with charts, graphs, and passionate arguments. But proof, real, hard proof, remained just out of reach. Yet, as the years turned into decades, the specifics of the theories began to matter less. The true power of the Phoenix Signal, its lasting legacy, wasn't in the answer, but in the question itself. The mystery became its most potent feature. It wasn't about proving whether it was drones or aliens. It was about what the event inspired in us. It forced humanity to lift its collective gaze from the mundane, to look up from our screens and our daily struggles, and to confront the sheer, mind-boggling scale of the universe. It was a cosmic nudge, a reminder that there are things beyond our understanding, that the frontier is not a place we go, but a state of mind we inhabit when we allow ourselves to wonder. The Phoenix Signal urged us to dream again. In a world that often felt mapped, solved, and explained, it reintroduced a profound sense of mystery. It gave us permission to imagine, to speculate, to tell stories. It fueled a generation of scientists, artists, and thinkers who were driven not by the need for concrete answers, but by the thrill of the chase and the beauty of the unknown. It reminded us that the pursuit of knowledge is a journey, not a destination. And so, the story lives on, held in the quiet embrace of the Arizona desert. It's whispered by the wind as it sweeps through saguaro cacti, and it's reflected in the silent, knowing eyes of the coyotes. The desert and its countless stars hold the memory of that night, a silent monument to the moment the cosmos whispered. And for a brief, shining instant, humanity listened. It's a legacy that teaches us that sometimes the greatest gifts don't come with explanations. They come as a question, whispered from the stars, inviting us to look up and wonder. High in the rolling hills of Cordoba, Argentina, lies a biofarm bathed in the cool, artificial glow of grow lights. This is the domain of Elara Rosa, a brilliant botanist who has turned this patch of earth into a marvel of futuristic agriculture. Her farm isn't just soil and seeds. It's a symphony of technology, with AI systems precisely managing every drop of water, every nutrient, every photon of light. But on one particular evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, something extraordinary happened. The usual hum of technology fell silent. A strange, ethereal blue light began to pulse from the center of her largest greenhouse, casting long, dancing shadows across the rows of genetically perfected crops. The air grew still, and a profound silence descended. A silence so deep it felt like the world was holding its breath. Elara, monitoring her farm from the control room, saw the anomaly on her screens. Her AI irrigation system, usually a flawless dance of precision, was completely frozen. Alarms should have been blaring, but there was only static. Puzzled and a little unnerved, she grabbed a handheld sensor and stepped out into the crisp night air, her boots crunching on the gravel path leading to the main greenhouse. As she approached, the blue glow intensified, spilling out from the glass panels. Her heart pounded in her chest. This was no system malfunction. This was something else entirely. She cautiously slid open the greenhouse door, and the sight that met her eyes made her stop dead in her tracks. There, standing among her prized tomato vines, were two figures. They were a tal impossibly tall, and seemed to be woven from the very light that illuminated them. Their forms were translucent, shifting and shimmering like a heat haze on a summer road. They had no discernible faces, no features she could recognize. Yet she felt an overwhelming sense of intelligence, of ancient wisdom, radiating from them. They were simply there, not threatening, but their sheer presence was enough to warp the reality around them. The air around the beings crackled with an energy that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. Her sophisticated sensors, which could detect the faintest change in humidity or soil pH, were now screaming with unreadable data torrent of pure static. It was as if these beings existed on a frequency her technology couldn't comprehend. As Elara stared, frozen in awe and a touch of fear, an image flooded her mind. It wasn't a thought or a memory of her own. It was a vision, vivid and overwhelming. She saw a city, not of steel and glass, but of living crystalline structures that reached for a sky with two suns. She saw beings of light moving through streets of pure energy, heard a chorus of sounds that was both music and language. It was a glimpse into a world so alien, so advanced. It defied all human understanding. The vision lasted only a second, but it felt like a lifetime, expanding her consciousness in ways she couldn't begin to process. Then, as quickly as they had appeared, the two figures dissolved. The blue light didn't just switch off, it folded in on itself, collapsing into a single point of brilliance before vanishing completely. The greenhouse was plunged back into the familiar, sterile glow of its standard grow lights. The hum of the AI systems returned, the irrigation sprinklers kicking back to life with a gentle hiss. Everything was back to normal. Except it wasn't. Elara's gaze fell upon the spot where the beings had stood. A single tomato vine, one she had planted just that morning as a tiny seedling, had undergone an impossible transformation. It had grown to full maturity, its stem thick and strong, its leaves a vibrant green, and hanging from its branches were clusters of ripe, red tomatoes, each one glowing with a faint, residual blue light. It was a biological impossibility, a miracle of growth that defied every law of nature she had dedicated her life to studying. Shaken to her core, Elara reached out a trembling hand and plucked one of the tomatoes. It was warm to the touch, and it pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic energy. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she had witnessed something that would change humanity forever. But what could she do? Who would ever believe her? In the weeks that followed, Elara tried to replicate the conditions. She analyzed the glowing tomato, but its genetic makeup was unlike anything she'd ever seen. It contained elements not found on the periodic table, Her research led her nowhere. The event had left its mark not just on the vine, but on her. She became withdrawn, obsessed. Her meticulous work replaced by a frantic search for answers. The farm, once a symbol of human ingenuity, began to fall into disrepair. Ilara Rosa, the visionary botanist, eventually abandoned her life's work. She simply disappeared, leaving everything behind. The glowing garden was left to the wind and the wild, its advanced systems slowly succumbing to the passage of time. Years later, explorers and scavengers who dared to venture into the overgrown ruins of the biofarm reported strange phenomena. The old sensors, still faintly powered by decaying solar cells, would occasionally flicker to life. They didn't register temperature or moisture anymore. All they detected in the dead of night was a faint, persistent static, a whisper from the stars, a ghost of the day the garden glowed, and a silent testament to the visitors who once stood among the vines. The mystery of Ilara Rosa and her glowing garden became another whispered legend in the hills of Cordiba, a story of a brief, impossible intersection between our world and another. They say the universe is full of mysteries, but what if a mystery finds you, grabs hold, and rewrites your very existence? Today, we're diving into the strange and unsettling case of Dr. Eris Thorne, a brilliant quantum physicist whose life was fractured by a single, inexplicable event in the heart of Lapland. Imagine this: a vast, silent expanse of snow, the northern lights dancing overhead. Dr. Ari, a man who saw the world in equations and probabilities, was there on a research sabbatical. He wasn't looking for anomalies outside of his field. But one frigid night, something found him. A disk, not of any known material, hovering just above the snow, pulsing with a soft, ethereal light. It wasn't just light, though. Ari described it as a sound he could feel in his bones, a harmonic pulse that seemed to resonate with the very air around him. He approached Ed, mesmerized, a scientist driven by an insatiable curiosity. He reached out, and then nothing. His next memory was waking up in his research cabin. The sun high in the sky. He felt groggy, disoriented, like he'd slept for a decade. A quick glance at the date confirmed his worst fear. It wasn't the next morning. 2 full days had vanished. 48 hours erased from his life, as if they never happened. Panique set in. He checked his gear, his notes. Everything was as he'd left it. But then he accessed his neural journal. For those who don't know, a neural journal is an advanced piece of tech, a direct brain-to-text interface that records a user's thoughts, observations, and even subconscious streams. It was Ari's most trusted tool, an extension of his own mind. He scrolled back to the missing days, expecting blank files. What he found was far more chilling. The entries weren't empty. They were filled, page after digital page, with intricate, flowing glyphs, symbols that looked like a blend of mathematics and biology, utterly alien, yet possessing a strange, undeniable logic. They flowed across the screen, a language he had somehow recorded but could not comprehend. This was the breaking point for Dr. Ari Thorne, the man who had dedicated his life to the predictable, measurable laws of physics, was confronted with something that defied all of them. The disk, the missing time, the impossible language scribbled by his own subconscious mind. It shattered his reality. He couldn't go back to calculating particle decay or theorizing about string theory. How could he, when he had proof of something else? Something vast and unknown. He made a decision that would ostracize him from the scientific community. He abandoned quantum physics. He packed up his life's work, resigned from his prestigious position, and dedicated himself to a new, singular obsession. Resonance. He believed the key was in that harmonic pulse. He was convinced it wasn't just a random phenomenon. It was a signal, a form of communication. He liquidated his assets, built a state-of-the-art sound lab in a remote location, and began his hunt. He was chasing a ghost signal, a cosmic whisper that only he had ever heard. His former colleagues called him mad. They said he'd succumbed to the pressure, a brilliant mind lost to delusion. He became a cautionary tale whispered in university hallways. Don't end up like Thorne, they'd say. But Ari didn't care. He was a man possessed, spending years surrounded by oscilloscopes and frequency analyzers, trying to replicate that single, life-altering tone. He believed that if he could just recreate that pulse, he could unlock the glyphs in his neural journal, understand what happened during those 48 hours, and perhaps even open a door to wherever that disc came from. Years passed. Ari became a recluse, his name fading from scientific journals and into obscurity. His quest yielded nothing but silence. The universe, it seemed, had shared its secret once and was not willing to speak again. He was alone with his impossible memory and the alien text locked in his own mind. The world moved on, and Dr. Ari was left behind, a lonely sentinel listening for a sound no one else believed in. But the story doesn't end there. Years after Ari's disappearance from the public eye, a final, chilling piece of the puzzle emerged. The remote research cabin in Lapland, where it all began, had been maintained by an automated system. Its logs, stored on a secure server, were eventually accessed during a routine decommissioning. Buried deep within the data logs from the week of RES incident was an entry from the cabin's sophisticated environmental AI. On the second day of Ari's missing time, the system recorded a massive anomalous energy event originating just outside the cabin. The AI's audio sensors registered a high-frequency, multi-layered harmonic pulse. It was a sound that defied all known sources, natural or meant. The system logged it as an unexplained phenomenon, unable to classify it. The AI, a machine of pure logic and data, had recorded the very same pulse that shattered Dr. Ari's world and sent him on his lonely crusade. It was objective, undeniable proof. Ari wasn't mad. He hadn't imagined it. The signal was real, but this validation came too late. Dr. Ari had long since vanished, his private lab found empty, his work left unfinished. To this day, no one knows where he went. Did he finally replicate the signal? Did he find the door he was looking for and step through? Or did he simply walk away, accepting that some mysteries are not meant to be solved? The story of Dr. Eris Thorne serves as a chilling reminder. We look to science to explain our world, to provide order and reason. But what happens when science itself points to something beyond its own understanding? Ari heard a whisper from the cosmos, and it cost him everything. It leaves us with a question that echoes in the silence he left behind. Are we truly alone? Or are we just not listening on the right frequency? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the unknown. If you enjoy exploring these kinds of mysteries, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Let me know in the comments what you think happened to Dr. Ari. Until next time, stay curious. We're venturing into the deep, dark waters of Scotland, to a place as famous for its beauty as it is for its mysteries. Loch Morar, while its more famous sibling, Loch Ness, often steals the spotlight, Loch Morar holds its own dark secrets. With depths plunging over 1,000 feet, it's the deepest freshwater body in the British Isles. And down in that crushing blackness, something is stirring. Our story begins with Duncan, a quantum physicist with a passion for the unexplained. He wasn't some casual tourist hoping for a monster sighting. Duncan was a serious researcher, armed with cutting-edge equipment designed to detect the most subtle anomalies in the natural world. He'd heard the local legends of Morag, the loch's resident cryptid, but he was there for science, not folklore. He set up his advanced quantum camera on the shores of Loch Morar, hoping to capture faint light phenomena, perhaps natural bioluminescence or geological light emissions. What he found was something far beyond his scientific expectations. It was a moonless, stardusted night, the kind of profound silence that only truly remote places can offer. As Duncan monitored his equipment, a soft, ethereal glow began to emanate from the water. At first, he thought it might be a trick of the light, a reflection from a distant farmhouse. But the glow intensified, pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. It wasn't on the surface, it was asterisk, under asterisk. Through his high-powered lenses, he could see distinct orbs of light, moving in what appeared to be a coordinated, almost intelligent pattern. They danced and orbited each other deep beneath the surface, their light a mesmerizing, otherworldly blue-green. Suddenly, his highly sensitive quantum camera, a device designed to measure the very fabric of reality, began to malfunction. The readings went haywire, displaying impossible data streams. The lights weren't just lights. They were emitting a powerful energy field, something that was actively disrupting his state-of-the-art equipment. Duncan was baffled. No known natural phenomenon could produce such an effect. He was witnessing something that defied the known laws of physics. As he scrambled to recalibrate his instruments, the scene in the loch escalated dramatically. The orbiting lights converged, merging into a single, blindingly brilliant point of light. Then, with a speed that seemed to defy inertia, a concentrated beam of pure, white energy shot straight up from the loch's surface, punching a hole through the low-lying mist and disappearing into the night sky. The event was completely silent, which made it all the more terrifying. There was no explosion, no splash, just a silent, powerful eruption of light from the abyss. In the moments after the beam vanished, the eerie silence returned. But the water was no longer still. Dozens, then hundreds, of fish began to float to the surface, their silver scales glinting in the faint starlight. They weren't dead, but stunned, paralyzed by the immense energy release. Duncan, a man of science and logic, stood frozen on the shore, his mind racing to process the impossible spectacle he had just witnessed. He had come looking for subtle anomalies, and instead found a display of power that felt ancient and technological all at once. Shaken, Duncan decided to speak with the locals. He was cautious, not wanting to sound like a madman. He started by asking general questions about the loch. It didn't take long for the stories to spill out. An old fisherman, a man whose family had worked these waters for generations, told him about the hums. He described a low frequency, resonant sound that would sometimes emanate from the deepest part of the loch. A sound that you felt in your bones, more than you heard with your ears. He said it was a sign that the old ones were awake. Others confirmed his account. People living along the shore reported hearing the same deep, vibrational hum, often on clear, quiet nights, just like the one Duncan had experienced. The sound was unsettling, a constant, low-frequency thrum that seemed to come from the very bedrock of the loch itself. The fishermen noted that on nights when the hum was strongest, their modern fish-finding sonar would go completely dead. Any electronic device near the water's edge would glitch and fail. The energy field Duncan had recorded wasn't a one-time event. It was a recurring phenomenon known to the community for years. Driven by these accounts, several research teams, both private and academic, have tried to explore Loch Morar's depths over the years. They've brought submarines, advanced sonar arrays, and remotely operated vehicles, the best technology available, and every single one has failed. As their equipment descends into the trench, the deepest part of the loch, it invariably malfunctions. Cameras go dark, communication links are severed, and control systems fail. The official reports often blame the extreme pressure or unforeseen technical difficulties, but the pattern is too consistent. It's as if something down there is actively preventing exploration, a technological no-go zone in the heart of the Scottish Highlands. So what is happening beneath Loch Morar? The evidence points to something beyond a simple lake monster. The orbiting lights, the energy beams, the persistent hum, and the technological dead zone all suggest the presence of something advanced, something perhaps not of this world. Could it be a submerged, autonomous craft? An ancient sentinel guarding something in the depths? Is it a natural geological phenomenon so rare that our science has yet to identify it? Or could the old legends of Morag be a folk memory of something far more complex and technological than we ever imagined? The mystery of Loch Morar is a perfect blend of modern science and ancient folklore. Duncan's experience provides a tantalizing piece of the puzzle, a modern, data-driven account of something deeply strange. The loch doesn't just hide a monster, it seems to hide a powerful, active, and intelligent force. A force that, for reasons we can only guess at, chooses to remain hidden in the dark, cold depths, occasionally reminding us of its presence with a hum from below and a flash of light to the stars. It all started on a night I'll never forget, a night that bent the very fabric of my reality. My name is James and Biketon. I was just a mid-level tech assigned to the Montana sector, overseeing the quantum data relay. These weren't your everyday comms towers. They were the backbone of our global information network. processing data at speeds that were, quite literally, unthinkable. We called the facility Big Sky Sentinel, a testament to its remote, sprawling location under the vast, star-dusted canopy of Montana. That evening, a routine diagnostic check turned into something else entirely. I was monitoring the primary tower, Tower 7, when an anomaly flickered across my console. It wasn't a system error or a weather disturbance. It was an intrusion. But not like any I'd ever seen. There were no alarms, no frantic system warnings, just a quiet, surgical silence that was more terrifying than any siren. I patched into the external surveillance feeds, and there it was, hovering near the apex of Tower 7, a perfect, matte black disk. It was utterly featureless, absorbing the moonlight like a hole in space. There was no hum, no engine roar, no visible propulsion. It just hung there, a silent, obsidian predator against the constellations. Then, a beam of what I can only describe as pure information, focused. Non-luminous stream shot from the disk and connected with the tower's primary quantum transceiver. My console went wild, but not in the way you'd expect. The data wasn't being stolen or corrupted. It was being rewritten, erased. Every petabyte of quantum records stored in that node, financial transactions, historical archives, classified government communications, was vanishing. It wasn't just deletion. It was like it never existed in the first place. The logs were being wiped clean. The backups were turning into empty files. The very quantum states that held the information were reverting to zero. Then, I felt it. A low, subaudible tone began to resonate, not through the air, but through my own neural implants. Every tech in my division had them, standard issue gear for interfacing with a quantum network. The vibration was deep, invasive, a hum that seemed to bypass my ears and sink directly into my bones, my thoughts. It wasn't painful, but it was profoundly unsettling. Like a phantom limb I never knew I had suddenly starting to ache. It was a carrier wave, I realized, and the data it carried was the command for absolute erasure. The disk wasn't just deleting data. It was broadcasting a frequency that made the system delete itself. I tried to initiate a hard shutdown, to sever the connection, but my commands were useless. The system no longer recognized me. It was serving a new master. I could only watch, a helpless ghost in my own machine. As years of accumulated human knowledge, our digital ghosts evaporated into nothingness. The process took exactly 7 minutes. Then, as silently as it appeared, the disk retracted its beam and ascended, vanishing into the dark sky without a trace. The aftermath was chaos wrapped in confusion. When the Hyrups descended on the site, they found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no fried circuits, no residual radiation, just a communications tower that was functionally inert. Its quantum core a blank slate. The official report was a masterpiece of corporate obfuscation. A catastrophic, cascading system failure due to a previously unknown quantum resonance cascade. I was debriefed, questioned, and scanned. I told them what I saw, what I felt. They nodded, took notes, and classified my testimony as a stress-induced hallucination. The Big Sky Sentinel was decommissioned. The official reason was that the technology had become obsolete, too vulnerable. They built a new facility elsewhere, with different protocols. Tower 7 was left to rust under the Montana sky, a silent monument to an event that, officially, never happened. They called me unreliable, put me on indefinite leave, and quietly pushed me out of the industry I had dedicated my life to. They wanted me to forget. But how could I? That resonant tone was etched into my memory, a ghost frequency I could still feel on quiet nights. Years pass. I tried to move on, to build a new life away from the hum of quantum processors. But I couldn't let it go. I spent my nights digging through obscure forums, backalley data brokers, and declassified government archives, searching for any mention of similar events. I found whispers, fragments, a data blackout in the Ural Mountains, a silent observatory in the Atacama Desert. Stories just like mine, all dismissed as glitches or hoaxes. It was a retired sensor AI from the old Sentinel project, That gave me my first real lead. I managed to gain remote access to its archived logs, the ones they thought they'd scrubbed. The AI, designed for long-term environmental monitoring around the decommissioned site, had been running in low-power mode for years, and it had been dutifully recording. Tucked away in years of seismic and atmospheric data, I found it. Faint, intermittent pulses of red-shifted light emanating from the direction of Tower Savan. They weren't random, they occurred at precise intervals, following a complex, non-random pattern. It was a signal. The tower wasn't dead. It was transmitting. That black disk hadn't just erased the data, it had repurposed. The tower, it had turned our most advanced piece of communication technology into a silent relay for something else. The vibration in my implants, the one I felt that night, had left a sort of digital scar, a backdoor. As I analyzed the faint red pulses from the tower, I felt that same resonance again, faintly, through my old implants. It was like a key turning in a lock I didn't know I had. The pulses from the tower were speaking a language, and a part of my own cybernetics was starting to understand it. I knew then that my life had a new purpose. This wasn't just about a single event in Montana. This was bigger. This was a network, a silent, invisible grid laid over our own, using our own infrastructure against us. For what purpose, I didn't know. But the tower was still talking, and I was, perhaps, the only person who could listen. So, I packed my bags. I'm heading back to Montana, back to the skeleton of Tower 7. They call me a conspiracy theorist. Man chasing shadows. Maybe they're right, but I saw what I saw, and I feel what I feel. That tower is a beacon in a silent conversation spanning galaxies, and I'm going to find out who or what is on the other end of the line. The relay is silent, but I'm listening, and I'm getting closer. Have you ever been driving down a long, lonely highway and felt like something was off? Like the world just glitched? For a second, for a crew of highway workers in Virginia, that feeling became terrifyingly real. It was a day like any other, patching up asphalt under the summer sun. When they saw it, propped against a guardrail, shimmering in the heat, was a mirror. But this wasn't just any mirror. It wasn't reflecting their tired faces or the familiar stretch of road behind them. It was reflecting something else. Something alien. The men stopped, their jackhammers falling silent. They cautiously approached the object. Through the glass, they saw a road, but it wasn't theirs. The asphalt was a strange, iridescent black, and the lines glowed with a faint, pulsing light. The landscape on either side was a blur of bizarre, shifting shapes and colors. They couldn't comprehend it. It was like looking through a window into another dimension. One worker, we'll call him Dave, later said it was mesmerizing, beautiful, and deeply unsettling all at once. Strange, shadowy figures seemed to move just at the edge of his vision within the mirror's world, never quite coming into focus. Curiosity, as it always does, got the better of them. Another worker, let's call him Mike, reached out a hesitant hand. Mike had a cybernetic implant in his arm, a common piece of tech for monitoring health and work vitals. The moment his fingers brushed against the cool, smooth surface of the mirror, everything went wrong. A jolt, like a massive static shock, shot up his arm. The display on his implant flickered wildly and then went dark. It was completely dead, frozen in time. He yanked his hand back, crying out in shock, not from pain, but from the sheer strangeness of it. His implant, a durable piece of equipment designed to withstand heavy industrial work, was fried out. As Mike stumbled back, clutching his arm, the mirror began to change. The alien road within it started to waver, like a heat haze on overdrive. The shimmering intensified, a low hum filling the air around them. The workers shielded their eyes as the light grew impossibly bright for a split second, and then it was gone. Just vanished. No sound, no explosion, just gone. All that remained was the quiet hum of the highway and the faint smell of ozone in the air. They were left standing there, blinking in the sunlight, questioning their own sanity. Did that really just happen? The incident was reported, of course. But how do you explain a dimension-hopping mirror to your supervisor? It sounded like a story cooked up to get out of work. The official report probably read something like equipment, malfunction, and sunstroke. Mike's implant was sent for analysis, but the technicians were baffled. They'd never seen anything like it. It wasn't just broken. It was as if its internal clock had been stopped at a fundamental level. Its circuits locked in a state of permanent stasis. The data was inaccessible, trapped. The official cause was listed as an unprecedented electrical surge from an unknown source. Vague, to say the least. Life of the highway crew slowly returned to normal, but the memory of the mirror lingered. They'd joke about it nervously, but none of them ever really forgot the bizarre road and the shadowy figures. The story might have ended there, a weird anecdote shared over beers, if it weren't for a routine survey conducted a few months later. The highway department sent up drones equipped with advanced topographical mapping software to survey the area for a potential expansion. Project Dot. This is where the story takes its next chilling turn. The drones flew their pre-programmed grid, their sensors scanning every inch of the landscape. When the data was processed, the engineers found something impossible. Right where the workers had seen the mirror, the mapping software detected a massive, invisible structure. It was a smooth, perfectly curved path, arcing over the highway and disappearing into the fields on either side. It wasn't a road, not a bridge, not anything they could identify. It had no physical presence. You couldn't see it, you couldn't touch it. But according to the highly sensitive LiDAR and radar, something was there, a ghost road, overlaid on their reality. The engineers ran the scans again. And again, they calibrated the equipment, checked for errors, and even sent up a different set of drones. The results were always the same. This invisible, curved anomaly was undeniably present in the data. It followed the exact path of the strange, glowing road the workers had seen in the mirror. It was as if the mirror hadn't just shown them another place. It had left behind a scar, an echo of its presence on the very fabric of space-time. A path that their technology could detect, but their senses could not perceive. This anomaly became known among a very small, very quiet group of researchers as the Mirror Void. What was it? Was it a temporary bridge between universes? A portal left ajar? And what about the shadowy figures moving within it? Were they just tricks of the light? Or were they inhabitants of that other place? Perhaps looking back at us? The freezing of the cybernetic implants suggests the Void operates under different physical laws, capable of interacting with our technology in ways we can't comprehend. It didn't destroy the implant with heat or force. It simply stopped it, freezing its processes. The implications are staggering. It suggests that our world might be crisscrossed with invisible highways, pathways used by, well, we don't know, beings or forces from other dimensions, traveling through our reality as if it were just empty space. We're like fish in a bowl, completely unaware of the room around us, except for those rare, fleeting moments when a reflection shows us a glimpse of what lies beyond the glass. The Virginia highway workers weren't just fixing a road. They stumbled upon a cosmic intersection. The area is still monitored, discreetly. Of course, scientists and theorists in the know have pored over the drone data, trying to understand the nature of the Mirror Void. But it remains a complete mystery. The curve is still there, a silent, invisible monument to a moment when two worlds touched. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other voids are out there? How many times have we walked right through an interdimensional crossroad without ever knowing it? The next time you see a strange reflection or feel a weird sense of displacement, maybe it's not just your imagination. Maybe you're standing on the edge of a mirror void, getting a fleeting glimpse of the alien road that runs right through our own backyard. Have you ever wondered what secrets lie hidden in the most remote corners of our planet? Places so isolated that technology fails and the laws of nature seem to bend. Today, we're venturing into a story that blurs the line between science fiction and chilling reality. A tale from a research team stationed in one of the world's most desolate landscapes. It started like any other day for them, a routine survey of the vast, empty wilderness. But then, something appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the stark sky, standing on a distant ridge. were figures. They were unnaturally tall, slender, and completely featureless. No faces, no clothes, just silent, motionless silhouettes, observing from afar. The researchers grabbed their binoculars, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Were they strange rock formations? A trick of the light? But the figures had a presence, an undeniable sense of awareness that sent a shiver down their spines. Almost immediately, their high-tech equipment began to malfunction. The satellite link, their only connection to the outside world, went dead. GPS signals vanished. Communication was completely cut off, plunging them into an eerie, enforced silence. It was as if these sentinels, as they began to call them, were projecting a field that disrupted everything around them. The team felt an overwhelming sense of being watched, studied by these silent, faceless giants. Panic began to set in. They were trapped, isolated, with unknown entities on the ridge. The lead scientist, Dr. Aristorne, a man who had built his career on logic and reason, found himself grappling with a phenomenon that defied every principle he knew. He ordered a drone to be sent for a closer look, hoping to get some answers. The drone ascended, its camera feeding back a shaky image of the distant figures. As it neared the ridge, the video feed crackled, distorted, and then went black. The drone had simply dropped out of the sky, another victim of the invisible interference. For 3 days, the standoff continued. The sentinels remained on the ridge, unmoving, their featureless forms a constant, unnerving presence. The researchers cut off and on edge, documented everything they could. They noted the complete absence of wildlife, the dead silence of the landscape, and the strange, electric hum that seemed to permeate the air. Sleep became a luxury they couldn't afford, as the feeling of being observed never left them. They felt like specimens in a petri dish, under the silent gaze of something ancient and powerful. On the 4th morning, they awoke to an even more profound silence. The figures on the ridge were gone. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and a sense of relief washed over the camp. Tentatively, they checked their equipment. The satellite link flickered back to life. GPS signals returned. It was as if the phenomena had never happened, but the memory, the sheer terror of it, was burned into their minds. Driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and a desperate need for answers, Dr. Thorne and 2 other team members decided to hike to the ridge where the sentinels had stood. They had to know what was there. The trek was unnerving. The landscape felt scarred, wounded. As they got closer, they noticed a distinct path leading up the slope. The trees and shrubs along this path were scorched, blackened as if by an intense, focused heat. But there was no other sign of a fire. It was a sterile, scorched trail leading directly to the observation point. When they finally reached the summit, they found nothing. No footprints, no physical evidence that anything had been there at all. Just a scorched ground and a lingering, unsettling energy. It was here they had placed a series of experimental quantum sensors, devices designed to detect subtle shifts in reality. They rushed to check the data logs. Every single sensor was dead, not just powered down, but completely fried. Their delicate internal components melted and fused. The data was gone, wiped clean by whatever had stood on that ridge. They returned to their base camp, defeated and profoundly disturbed. Their encounter had left them with more questions than answers. What were these faceless sentinels? Were they guardians of some kind? Extra-dimensional beings? Or something else entirely? Something our science has no name for yet. The official report was heavily redacted, citing unexplained atmospheric and electromagnetic interference. The site was declared a no-go zone and permanently abandoned, but the story lives on through whispers in the scientific community. A chilling reminder that there are things in this world that we do not understand, that in the vast, empty spaces of our planet, we might not be alone. These silent, faceless sentinels stand as a testament to the profound mysteries that lie just beyond the edge of our perception, watching and waiting. Imagine this. You're high in the Albanian highlands. The only sounds are the wind and the soft bleating of your flock. The snow lies thick and white under a canopy of stars. This was Adam's world. But on this particular night, the familiar silence was broken. A triangular shape, dark against the stardusted sky, descended without a sound. It hovered over his field, a silent, geometric phantom. As Adam watched, frozen in place, a figure emerged from the craft. It wasn't human, not as we know it. He described it as shimmering, almost like a heat haze on a summer's day. But this was the dead of winter. It moved with an unnatural grace across the snow, its form wavering, indistinct. It seemed to glide rather than walk, a being of light and energy. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Adam's heavy woolen coat. He was a man of the mountains, accustomed to wolves and bears. But this was something entirely different. This was something alien. The next morning, the triangle and the shimmering figure were gone, but the evidence of their visit was stark and terrifying. A large patch of snow in the field was completely scorched, melted down to the frozen earth in a perfect, unnatural circle. And worse, a dozen of his best sheep were missing. There were no tracks, no signs of a struggle, no blood. It was as if they had simply vanished into thin air. The remaining flock was agitated, huddled together, their fear a palpable thing in the crisp morning air. Adam knew this wasn't the work of any predator. He knew this was something beyond his comprehension. Haunted by the encounter, Adam's life was irrevocably altered. He, a simple shepherd, became an obsessive chronicler of the unknown. He started a journal, not with words at first, but with sketches. His hands, calloused from years of work, began to draw strange, complex shapes, geometric patterns, and symbols he claimed were from the alien craft. These weren't random doodles. They were intricate, filled with a logic that seemed both ancient and futuristic. His journal pages filled with depictions of what he called quantum talismans. He believed these symbols held power, a way to understand or perhaps even communicate with the visitors. Adam's obsession grew. He began carving these symbols into pieces of wood and stone, creating physical representations of the otherworldly geometry he had witnessed. He told the few people who would listen that these weren't just carvings. They were keys, tools to interact with a different dimension. His fellow villagers, who had once respected him as a wise and steady man, now whispered that the mountain's solitude had finally claimed his sanity. They saw a man lost in a world of his own making, talking to the sky and carving nonsensical patterns. His journal entries became more frantic, more detailed. He described the feeling of being watched, a constant, oppressive presence from the sky above. "The sky has eyes," he wrote, "and they do not blink." He sketched star charts, but they weren't the constellations we know. They were alien maps, diagrams of star systems. He claimed the shimmering figure had shown him in a flash of nonverbal communication during their brief, terrifying encounter. He believed he had been given a glimpse into a vast, cosmic network, a timeless field that connected everything. Adam felt he was on the verge of a breakthrough. He believed his talismans and his understanding of this alien geometry were a form of protection, a shield against the watchers in the sky. He wrote about a frequency he needed to match, a vibration that would either make him invisible to the visitors or allow him to finally understand their purpose. Was he descending into madness? Or was he on the cusp of one of the greatest discoveries in human history? The isolation took its toll. Adam retreated further from his village, spending all his time in the mountains, his flock largely forgotten. He was a man possessed by a single, all-consuming idea. He was no longer just a shepherd. He was a guardian, a reluctant student of a cosmic school he never asked to attend. His journal became a testament to his lonely vigil, a strange and beautiful artifact filled with impossible science and desperate warnings. One spring, when the snows finally melted, a search party from the village went looking for Adam. They found his remote hut, but he was gone. Inside, they discovered his journal, every page filled with his intricate drawings and frantic script. The quantum talismans he had carved were arranged in a complex pattern on the floor. But of Adam, there was no trace. Like his sheep, he had simply vanished. What happened to Adam? Did he finally achieve the frequency he was searching for and step into another dimension? Was he taken by the shimmering figure he so feared and revered? Or did he simply succumb to the harshness of the mountains? A lonely man lost in his own delusions. The villagers have their theories, most of them mundane, but his journal remains, a bizarre and compelling piece of evidence. This story of Adam, the Albanian shepherd, forces us to question the boundaries of our reality. It's a tale that sits uncomfortably between folklore and ufology, between a psychological breakdown and a genuine close encounter. The scorched snow, the missing sheep, and the cryptic journal, these are the tangible pieces of an intangible mystery. Adam's story is a chilling reminder that there may be things in our world, in our very skies, that are far beyond our understanding. His timeless field may be more than just a madman's rambling. It could be a name for the very fabric of reality that we have yet to perceive. Deep beneath the icy crust of the remote Arctic archipelago, Novaya Zemlya, lies a secret so profound it was buried by the Soviet Union, hidden from the world for decades. This isn't just another Cold War ghost story. This is a tale of an impossible discovery, a mysterious object, and a warning from beyond our comprehension. Today, we venture into the frozen darkness to uncover the truth behind the Arctic chamber. Our story begins in the harsh, unforgiving landscape of Novaya Zemlya, a place known primarily as a Soviet nuclear testing site. It was here, during a routine excavation in the late 1980s, that a military engineering unit stumbled upon something extraordinary. While digging a new tunnel complex deep within a mountain, their drills hit a material that wasn't on any geological chart. It was unnaturally hard, almost indestructible. The soldiers, initially baffled, switched to more powerful equipment. After days of intense effort, they finally broke through. But what they found wasn't more rock. They had breached the wall of a perfectly spherical chamber, about 30 meters in diameter. The interior was smooth, polished, and radiated a palpable Hentele warmth, a stark contrast to the sub-zero temperatures of the surrounding permafrost. There were no visible seams, no signs of construction, as if it had been willed into existence. In the center of this otherworldly sphere, a single object rested on a small, smooth pedestal that seemed to grow out of the floor itself. It was a stone, roughly the size of a human head, with an intricate, almost biological pattern swirling across its surface. It pulsed with a faint, internal light and seemed to hum with a low, resonant frequency that vibrated through the very bones of the soldiers who dared to enter. The discovery was immediately classified at the highest level. A team of top Soviet scientists and military officials was dispatched to the site, codenamed Obiekta Karody, or the Arctic object. The initial surveys were baffling. The chamber's material defied analysis, and its internal temperature remained constant without any discernible power source. The air inside was sterile but breathable. All attention soon focused on the pulsating stone at its heart. This is where the story takes a chilling turn. The commanding officer of the scientific team, a seasoned and respected colonel, decided to conduct a direct physical test. The moment his glove made contact, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the object, engulfing the entire chamber. Every electronic device within a 1-kilometer radius instantly failed. The colonel was thrown back, collapsing to the floor, unconscious. They dragged him out of the chamber and back to the surface. The colonel was medically evacuated to a secure military hospital in Moscow. He remained in a coma for weeks, his brain activity showing patterns unlike anything the doctors had ever seen. Then, one day, his hand began to twitch. Still in a coma, the colonel began to write. It was a language on alien language. Cryptographers, linguists, and mathematicians were brought in, but no one could decipher it. After filling dozens of notebooks, the colonel's hands simply stopped. His final, silent testament was a library of indecipherable knowledge. What was this object? What had it done to the colonel? The entire project was erased from official records, its existence denied. For decades, it was. The Soviet Union collapsed, and the secrets of the Cold War slowly faded into history. But some stories refused to stay buried. Whispers and rumors among former military personnel kept the legend alive. And then, in the modern era, something strange was detected. One Sutskan focused on the supposedly dormant region of Novaya Zemlya picked up a peculiar signature deep within the very mountain where the tunnel was sealed. A small, persistent, and unnatural heat source was detected. The chamber is still there. It's still active. The object inside is still pulsing, waiting. A piece of ancient, lost technology from a civilization that predates our own, or simply the random firings of a mind overloaded by an alien consciousness. The sealed entrance remains a silent monument to a mystery we were not ready to face. The heat signature from deep within the Arctic ice is a constant reminder that something is down there, something beyond our current understanding. The questions raised by this discovery are as vast and cold as the Arctic itself. And perhaps the most unsettling question of all is not what the object is, but whether sealing it away was meant to protect us from it, or to protect it from us. The silent hum from beneath the ice continues, a patient, timeless enigma waiting for the day it will be rediscovered. Have you ever been driving late at night, on a road so deserted it feels like you're the last person on Earth? The kind of road that winds through endless fields under a sky bursting with stars, far from the city's glow. This is a story about a night like that. A story that will make you think twice about what's really out there in the quiet, dark corners of the world. Our story begins in the vast, open landscapes of Idaho with a man named Carl. Carl was a long-haul trucker, a man who knew the highways of America like the back of his hand. He'd seen it all, or so he thought. One autumn evening, he was on a back road shortcut, a route he'd taken a dozen times before. The air was crisp, and the only sound was the low rumble of his engine. Suddenly, something caught his eye. Off to the side of the road, in the middle of a vast, dark field, there was a light. It wasn't a farmhouse, and it wasn't a campfire. It was a soft, pulsating glow that seemed to emanate from the very ground itself, bathing the dry grass in an eerie, otherworldly luminescence. Curiosity got the better of him. Carl pulled his rig over to the shoulder, killed the engine, and stepped out into the profound silence of the Idaho night. The silence was the first thing that felt wrong. It was too complete. No crickets, no wind rustling through the grass, nothing. It was like the world was holding its breath. As his eyes adjusted, he saw it. Standing in the center of that glowing patch of earth was a figure. It wasn't solid, not really. It looked like a person's silhouette, made of television static, flickering and shimmering, a distortion in reality itself. It was tall, slender, and seemed to be just standing there, watching. Carl, being the practical man he was, reached for his phone to take a picture. He had to document this. But as he raised it, the screen went black, dead. He tried his flashlight, a heavy-duty mag light he always kept in the cab. Nothing. Not even a flicker. It was as if some invisible force was draining the power from everything around him. A cold knot of dread began to form in his stomach. This wasn't just strange, it was impossible. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, locked in a silent standoff with the static entity. It didn't move, it didn't make a sound, but he felt an intense pressure, a sense of being observed, analyzed by something that was utterly alien. The air grew heavy and thick with an almost electric charge. He could feel the hair on his arms standing on end. The rational part of his brain was screaming at him to get back in the truck and drive, but his feet felt rooted to the spot. Then, as abruptly as it appeared, the figure dissolved. It didn't walk away or fade out. It just blinked out of existence, like someone switching off an old TV set. The eerie glow in the field vanished with it, plunging the landscape back into absolute darkness. For a moment, Carl was left breathless in the sudden, returning silence of the night. The crickets started chirping again, almost hesitantly at first, as if they too were unsure if the coast was clear. Shaken, Carl scrambled back into his truck. He turned the key, and to his immense relief, the engine roared to life. He didn't wait a second longer. He threw the truck into gear and sped away, not daring to look in his rearview mirror. He drove 4 miles, his heart pounding against his ribs, until the first signs of dawn began to break on the horizon. The next day, driven by a need to know if he'd imagined it all, Carl drove back to the same spot. The field looked ordinary in the daylight, but as he got closer, he saw them. In the exact spot where the glowing patch had been, there was a series of large, perfectly circular scorch marks burned into the dry earth. They formed a strange, overlapping pattern he didn't recognize. The grass inside the circles was blackened and brittle. But the story doesn't end there. The most unsettling part happened a week later. Carl was back on the road, hundreds of miles away. His CB radio, which had been silent for hours, suddenly crackled to life. It wasn't a fellow trucker or a weather report. Through the static, a voice came through, clear as day. It was his own voice. He heard himself whisper, "It's watching. The thing is, Carl had never said those words. He had never recorded his voice. The radio hummed with his own unrecorded whisper for a few seconds, then fell silent again. He was never the same after that night. He sold his rig and took a local job, never again venturing out onto those lonely, dark highways. What did Carl see in that Idaho field? A glitch in the matrix? A visitor from another dimension? Some things are simply beyond our understanding. Fleeting moments that challenge our perception of reality. In the sun-scorched expanse of New Mexico, where the earth is baked a dusty ochre, Paul had carved out a life for himself. His home was a testament to tradition, an adobe house. Its walls thick and cool, a sanctuary against the relentless desert heat. Every room was a blend of rustic charm and quiet solitude. Every room, that is, except one. The blue room. It wasn't painted blue. The colors seemed to emanate from the very air within it, a deep, pulsating sapphire glow that defied any logical explanation. Paul had tried to understand it. He'd brought in electricians, physicists, even a few local mystics. No one could pinpoint the source. It was just blue. At the heart of this strange room sat a single object. An old, unassuming armchair. It was worn, its fabric faded, but it was from this chair that the inexplicable blue light seemed to be most concentrated. For months, Paul had lived with the mystery, treating it as a peculiar quirk of his desert home. But everything changed the day he connected his neural feed. It was a standard piece of tech, something most people used to interface with their personal devices, to stream information directly into their consciousness. As he sat in the blue room, not even in the chair itself, and activated the feed, his world fractured. The familiar hum of data streaming into his mind was drowned out by a deafening roar. The blue light in the room intensified, and in his mind's eye, the data wasn't just information anymore. It was a landscape. A shimmering, digital vista unfolded before him, and cutting through it was a tunnel, a swirling vortex of impossible geometry, glowing with the same unearthly blue as the room around him. It wasn't just a visual glitch. He could feel it, a gravitational pull on his very consciousness, tugging him toward an unknown digital horizon. The tunnel seemed alive, beckoning, promising. What? Knowledge. Oblivion. Panic seized him. This wasn't a feature. It was a breach. The chair, the room they were a gateway. He ripped the neural feed from his temple, the vision collapsing as the physical world rushed back in. His heart hammered against his ribs. The blue glow in the room seemed to mock him now, its gentle pulse hiding a terrifying secret. He stumbled back, his eyes locked on the armchair. It was more than just furniture. It was a focal point, a linchpin for an event he couldn't begin to comprehend. A quantum anomaly, his logical mind screamed, a tear in the fabric of his reality. He couldn't stay. To remain was to risk being pulled into that digital abyss, to have his consciousness unraveled by forces beyond his control. He grabbed a few essentials, his hands shaking. He had to warn someone, anyone, but who would believe him? On a small, dusty datapad, he scribbled a frantic message, a desperate warning to whoever might find this place. Stay away from the chair. It's a quantum anomaly. The blue, it's a tunnel. He left the datapad on the kitchen table, a final, desperate act. Then, without a backward glance, Paul fled his adobe home. He ran out into the blinding desert sun. The image of the blue tunnel burned into his mind. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to get away from the quiet little house in New Mexico and the terrifying, beautiful, blue nexus it contained. He was no longer just a man living a simple life. He was a man on the run from a color, a fugitive from a place that shouldn't exist. The desert stretched on forever, but he feared no distance would ever be great enough. Have you ever heard a voice when no one was there? A whisper on the wind that seems to carry a message just for you. For a man named Claude, living deep in the heart of Louisiana, this wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was a chilling reality that began one misty evening by the river. Claude was an amateur sound recording, fascinated by the natural symphony of the bayou. He'd spend hours by the water's edge, his sensitive microphone capturing the chorus of cicadas, the gentle lapping of the water, and the distant call of night birds. He loved listening back, isolating the sounds of the wild. But one night, he captured something else entirely, something that didn't belong. He was in his small, rustic cabin, editing the day's recordings. The familiar sounds of the swamp filled his headphones. Then, through the static, a voice emerged. It was faint, ethereal, like a sigh carried on the current. It clearly whispered 3 words. Take them across. Claude's blood ran cold. A replayed Italiano. Again and again. There was no mistaking it. A human voice where no human had been. Who were they? And across. To where the next morning, a heavy unease followed Claude as he returned to the spot where he had recorded. He half expected to find an explanation, something to dismiss the eerie voice. Instead, what he found only deepened the mystery. There, in the soft mud of the riverbank, were footprints. Small, slender footprints, as if made by a child or a small woman. They were soaking wet, each print a perfect, dark impression leading from the dense tree line directly to the water's edge. And then they just stopped. They didn't return. It was as if someone had walked straight into the river and vanished. Panic began to set in. Claude scanned the opposite bank, a thick, dark wall of cypress and Spanish moss. The river was wide and the current deceptively strong. Had someone tried to cross? It out, his voice swallowed by the vast, indifferent wilderness. The only reply was the chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves. The voice on his recorder, the footprints in the mud dot. It all pointed to something inexplicable. Back at his cabin, the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. The simple, familiar space now felt alien, unsafe. That night, sleep wouldn't come. He sat by his window, staring into the impenetrable darkness of the bayou, the recorder on the table beside him. Around midnight, he heard it, a soft scratching sound coming from his front porch. It was rhythmic, deliberate. Scratch, pause. Scratch, pause. His heart hammered against his ribs. He wasn't just recording a ghost story anymore. He felt like he was living in one. Slowly, cautiously, he crept to the door and peered through a crack in the old wood. Nothing. Hoosted dark, shifting shapes of the trees. He held his breath, listening. The scratching started again, this time on the side of the cabin, closer to his window. It was the sound of fingernails dragging slowly, deliberately, down the wooden planks. Claude scrambled away from the wall, his mind racing. The voice, the footprints, and now this. The river seemed to be calling, not just on his recordings, but to his very doorstep, driven by a mix of terror and a desperate need for answers. Claude grabbed his recorder and a flashlight. He had to know what was out there. Stepping onto the porch, the night air was thick and heavy. He pointed his flashlight beam toward the side of the house where he'd heard the scratching. There, etched into the wood, were long, thin scrape marks, fresh and raw against the weathered timber. And below them, on the damp ground, was a single, wet footprint, identical to the ones he'd found by the river. It was pointed away from the cabin, leading back toward the dark, whispering water. The call was getting closer, more insistent. The river wanted something from him, and Claude was terrified he was about to find out what it was. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a story that blurs the line between the cosmos and our deepest fears. It's a tale that begins under the vast, star-dusted skies of Mongolia, a place so remote you feel like you can almost touch the heavens. But for one astrophysicist, Yelena, that proximity to the stars would become a terrifying ordeal. Picture this. You're out in the Mongolian steppe, the air crisp and cold, surrounded by an ocean of silence. Yelena was there with her team, tracking stellar movements, a routine night of research. But then, something impossible happened. The stars, those fixed, ancient points of light, began to move, not drift, but twist. They swelled together, faster and faster, forming a colossal, spinning vortex in the heart of the sky. It was a spiral, like a galaxy being born and dying all at once. right before her eyes. From the center of the celestial whirlpool, a beam shot down. But it wasn't a beam of light. It was the opposite. A column of absolute nothingness, a void that seemed to drink the starlight and the very darkness around it. It touched the earth with a silent, devastating grace. Yelena and her colleagues could only watch, frozen, as this pillar of emptiness descended upon the plains not far from their camp. The sight was hypnotizing, a cosmic horror that defied every law of physics they had dedicated their lives to understanding. Then they appeared. From the edges of the void, insect-like drones emerged. They weren't metallic or mechanical in any way we'd recognize. They moved with a skittering, unnatural speed, their forms shifting like heat haze. They were silent, purposeful, and utterly alien. Panic finally broke the spell. The team scattered, their scientific curiosity instantly replaced by a primal need to survive. The drones didn't seem to chase them, but their presence alone was a violation of reality itself. In the chaos, one of Yelena's colleagues, a man named Arlene, stumbled and fell into a freshly formed crater near where the beam had touched down. The others were too far, too panicked to help. Was gone. The next morning, after a sleepless night filled with terror, Yelena and the survivors cautiously made their way back to the site. The spiral in the sky was gone. The drones were gone. It was as if nothing had happened, except for the newly formed crater and the silence that Arlen left behind. They found his personal recorder lying near the edge of the crater. His body was nowhere to be seen. Hoping for answers, for any clue as to what had happened, they played the last recording. It wasn't his voice. It was a sound, a low, resonant tone that they didn't just hear with their ears. They felt it in their bones, a vibration that seemed to shake their very skeletons. The frequency was deeply unsettling, a sound that felt ancient and intelligent, and it communicated one simple, terrifying message. You are insignificant. The recording cut out, leaving only the sound of the Mongolian wind. Yelena was left with a chilling certainty. They had witnessed something not meant for human eyes, and the universe was far stranger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. What do you think happened out there? Was it an alien encounter, a tear in reality, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this dive into the unknown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that challenge our understanding of the world. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. The world, as we know it, has been reshaped by technology and time, but some places still hold on to their ancient magic. This is where our story begins, with a young woman named Lena, whose life was about to intersect with a mystery that defied all logic. It was a marvel of modern engineering, a warm, self-sufficient bubble against the biting cold. One evening, as the perpetual twilight of the polar night settled in, Lena was gazing out of her panoramic window. There, between two ancient, snow-heavy spruces, was a light. It formed a perfect rectangle, a window hanging impossibly in the middle of the forest. They were tall and slender, their forms indistinct, like shadows cast by a fire she couldn't see. She blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light, a reflection on the triple-paned glass. She called out for her father, her voice barely a whisper. Her father, a man whose face was a road map of long winters and deep thoughts, joined her at the window. He didn't dismiss it. He didn't rationalize. Instead, a flicker of something long buried a memory, a half-forgotten story surfaced in his gaze. Portals to somewhere else, a doorway. To where? The figures within the frames seemed to ripple, their forms momentarily clarifying before blurring again. Lena asked, her scientific, 21st century mind struggling to categorize what she was seeing. Aliens. A new kind of natural phenomenon. A projection from a rogue satellite. The Sami elders called them the Kuhoroskansa, the Whispering People. As they stood there, mesmerized, a soft chime echoed through the house. Unidentified energy signature in Sector Gamma 7. External sensors are non-responsive in that vector. Analyzing, the AI replied. The phenomena emits a broad spectrum of electromagnetic radiation, yet it does not interact with physical sensors. It appears... incorporeal. The figures within the portal seemed to stir, as if they knew they were being observed not just by human eyes, but by a machine. The figures were featureless, yet she felt an overwhelming sense of intelligence, of ancient and profound curiosity directed right at her. Search for acoustic anomalies. Keywords: tapping, whispering, resonance. The sounds have no discernible point of origin and are always registered during periods of intense geomagnetic activity. Faint tapping. Whispers from nowhere. Lena felt the pieces of a puzzle she never knew existed begin to slide into place. The legends her great-grandfather told, the strange lights, the unexplained sensor data, it was all connected. This wasn't a new phenomenon. It was an ancient one, and their hypermodern home had simply become the latest witness, its digital senses capturing echoes that had previously only been felt. As if responding to their discovery, one of the figures in the portal raised a long, slender arm. It wasn't a wave of greeting or a threat. It was a gesture of acknowledgement, of invitation. The light from the portal intensified, casting long, dancing shadows through the trees. It pulsed, gently. A slow, cosmic heartbeat. Lena felt a pull, a strange and powerful yearning to step outside, to walk into the snow and approach the impossible window. It promised answers to questions she hadn't even known how to ask. The secrets of the universe, it seemed, were waiting just a few hundred meters from her doorstep. Her father placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Some doors," he said softly, his voice full of a wisdom that straddled both the old world and the new, "are not meant to be opened. They're meant to remind us that we don't have all the answers, that there's more to this world than our sensors can read." Lena looked from the portal to her father's weathered face, and then back again. The figures were still there, patient and silent, watching from their world of light. The tapping Laggy had found, was it them? Trying to communicate, knocking on the veil between worlds. For hours, they watched, until the first hints of the distant sun began to dilute the polar night. As the sky brightened, the portal began to fade. It didn't snap shut. It dissolved, like sugar in water, the figures within receding until only the two ancient spruces remained, heavy with snow, as if nothing had ever been there. The silence that followed was profound. "Logi," Lena said, her voice hoarse. "Save all data from tonight. Create a new, classified file. Title it The Arctic Portal." File created, the AI confirmed. Life in the Arctic returned to normal. But for Lena, nothing would ever be the same. Every time she looked out at the forest, she didn't just see trees and snow. She saw the space between the trees, the possibility hanging in the cold, crisp air. She would spend years poring over the data, trying to decipher the tapping, listening for the whispers of the Kuhorasa. She had looked through a window into another reality, and now she knew, with absolute certainty, that humanity was not alone. We are simply part of a much larger, much stranger, and much more wondrous neighborhood than we could ever have imagined. The portal was gone for now, but Lena knew it would be back, and one day, she might just be ready to answer its silent invitation. Ever heard of a fog that whispers? Not just any fog, but a crimson one, rolling in from the icy North Atlantic. This isn't just a sailor's yarn. It's the chilling account of what happened in a remote Newfoundland lighthouse, a story that blurs the lines between our world and something else. Our story begins with Bill, a seasoned lighthouse keeper. He was a man of routine, someone who knew the sea like the back of his hand. But one night, the familiar gray mist was replaced by something he'd never seen before. A thick, unnatural red fog, a crimson veil, enveloped his lighthouse. It was bizarre, but the truly terrifying part wasn't the color. It was the sounds. From within the swirling red, Bill heard voices, not human voices, but a chorus of whispers and strange, melodic calls that seemed to pull at his very soul. Then came the lights. Bright, dancing orbs of light flitted through the fog, moving with an intelligence that defied any natural explanation. They weren't from a ship, and they weren't St. Elmo's fire. They were something entirely different. Bill, despite his fear, did what he always did. He documented everything in his logbook. He described the eerie glow, the hypnotic sounds, and a strange pressure against the lighthouse tower, as if something massive was pushing against it. 4 hours, he was trapped in this crimson nightmare, a lone sentinel in a sea of the unknown. When dawn finally broke, the fog vanished as quickly as it had appeared. The sky was clear, the sea calm, but the evidence of the night's strange visitor was undeniable. All around the base of the lighthouse, etched into the solid rock, were perfect, circular marks. They looked as if a giant, heated ring had been pressed into the stone, leaving behind scorched, glassy impressions. What could create such a thing? Shaken Bale went to make his final entry in the logbook. But as he opened it, his blood ran cold. The last entry, written in his own hand, detailed the events of the Crimson Veil. That wasn't the shocking part. The date he had written was for the next day. He had logged the event a full 24 hours before it was supposed to happen. How had the fog distorted time itself? Or had he been given a glimpse into the immediate future? Bill left the lighthouse shortly after, deeply unsettled by the experience. He could never explain the lost time or the impossible entry in his logbook. For years, the story of the Crimson Veil became a local legend, a ghost story told to spook tourists. But this is where the story takes a modern, even more terrifying turn. The old lighthouse was eventually automated, its human keeper replaced by a sophisticated AI system designed to monitor weather patterns and sea traffic. This AI, running complex, predictive algorithms, began to flag an anomaly. It detected a unique atmospheric signature, a specific combination of temperature, pressure, and electromagnetic frequencies that it couldn't identify. Cross-referencing historical data, the AI found a match. This signature was identical to the conditions recorded on that fateful night years ago. The system issued a stark, chilling warning. The atmospheric conditions for the return of the Crimson Veil were rapidly approaching. The same ethereal fog, with its voices and lights, was on a path to return to Newfoundland. Now, scientists and researchers are racing against the clock. Is it a rare natural phenomenon we don't understand? Or is it something else? A gateway to another dimension, or a visitor from the stars, returning to the place it once marked? The circular scars on the rock remain, a silent testament to its first visit. As the date logged by the AI draws nearer, one question hangs heavy in the salt-filled air. What will happen when the Crimson Veil descends again? Erin wasn't a thrill-seeker or a paranormal investigator. She was an artist, captivated by the subtle symphony of nature. Her project was to capture the sound of silence, the pure, unadulterated audio of the desert, far from the noise of human civilization. With our high-fidelity recording equipment, she ventured deep into the heart of Utah's sprawling wilderness, a place known for its stark beauty and profound quiet. She set up her gear, expecting to record nothing but the gentle whisper of the wind and the distant cry of a hawk. But the desert had other plans. As night fell, draping the canyons in a blanket of deep indigo, Erin settled in for her first recording session. The silence was, as she had hoped, almost absolute. But then, it began. A faint, ethereal sound, unlike anything she had ever heard. It wasn't an animal, and it wasn't the wind. It was a series of soft, melodic whistles, almost like a bird, but with a strange, electronic quality. They seemed to dance on the edge of her hearing, a fleeting melody in the immense emptiness. Intrigued, she adjusted her microphones, trying to pinpoint the source. The whistles were not constant. They would fade in and out, seemingly playing a game of hide-and-seek with her equipment. Just as she was starting to question if her ears were playing tricks on her, something else happened. A flicker of light in her peripheral vision. She turned, and there it was. A soft, pulsing blue light emanating from behind a cluster of red rock formations. It wasn't a campfire, and it wasn't a vehicle. The light pulsed in a steady, rhythmic pattern, almost in sync with the strange whistles she was hearing. A cold thrill, a mix of fear and intense curiosity, ran down her spine. Erin was alone, miles from the nearest road, witnessing a phenomenon that defied any logical explanation. She knew, in that moment, that this was no ordinary night in the desert, driven by an artist's curiosity and a researcher's instinct. Erin did the only thing she could think of. She kept recording. She aimed her parabolic microphone directly at the source of the sound, hoping to get a clean capture of the mysterious whistles. She also positioned her camera to record the pulsing blue lights, though the low light conditions made it difficult. For hours, she sat there, a silent observer to this strange and beautiful spectacle. The whistles continued their melodic dance, and the lights pulsed with a hypnotic rhythm. It felt less like a random occurrence and more like a deliberate performance, or perhaps a communication. The next morning, as the first rays of sun illuminated the landscape, the phenomena were gone. The whistles had ceased, and the blue lights had vanished. It was as if the desert had returned to its normal state, guarding its nighttime secrets. Shaken, but exhilarated, Erin packed up her equipment and made the long journey back to her studio. She couldn't wait to analyze the data she had collected. What she found on her recordings would be more bizarre and more profound than she could ever have imagined. It was the first piece of a puzzle that would lead her down a rabbit hole of scientific anomalies and cosmic questions. Back in the controlled environment of her studio, Erin began the painstaking process of cleaning up the audio. She filtered out the low-frequency hum of the wind and isolated the strange, whistling tones. As she listened to the playback, her heart skipped a beat. Beneath the primary melody of the whistles, there was something else, a faint, almost subliminal layer of sound. It was a voice. Her own voice, but she hadn't spoken a word during the recording. Chills crawled up her arms as she listened intently. The voice, her voice, was repeating a single, clear phrase. Follow the tone. Follow the tone. How was this possible? She was certain she hadn't spoken. Was it some kind of audio illusion? A trick of the mind? She checked her equipment, ran diagnostics, but everything was functioning perfectly. She replayed the clip over and over. The voice was undeniably hers, yet it was not her. It was as if her own recorder had captured a message from another time or another place, using her own vocal signature. The phrase "follow the tone" was no longer just a weird artifact. It was a directive, a command. But what tone was she supposed to follow, and where would it lead? The mystery had just deepened, taking a sharp turn into the deeply personal and the unnervingly paranormal. Haunted by the disembodied voice on her recording, Erin knew she had to go back. The message, "Follow the tone," was an invitation she couldn't refuse. A week later, she was back in the same remote corner of the Utah desert. This time, she was not just an observer. She was a participant in whatever strange event was unfolding. As dusk settled, she waited with a mix of dread and anticipation. And right on cue, as the last light of day faded, the whistles began. That same ethereal, electronic melody filled the air. Remembering the instruction, Erin didn't just record this time. Listene, truly listened. With her headphones on, she focused on the tone from the message. It was the dominant frequency in the series of whistles. Tuning her senses to it, she began to walk, letting the sound guide her. It was a strange pilgrimage through the dark, trusting nothing but a mysterious sound and a message from her own voice. The tone led her away from her camp, deeper into the maze of canyons Asa walked. She noticed the blue pulses of light again, but this time, they seemed to be marking her path, appearing ahead of her and then fading as she passed. It was as if the light and sound were working in unison, leading her to a specific destination. After what felt like an hour of walking, the tone led her to a small, hidden basin, a natural amphitheater of sand surrounded by rock walls. And there, in the center of the basin, she saw them. Etched into the sand were a series of perfect, concentric circles. Tay, wary bust, covering an area dozens of yards across. The lines were so precise, so geometric, it was impossible to imagine them being formed by wind or water. They looked man-made, or rather, not man. They looked intelligently designed. The circular marks were a complete surprise, a physical manifestation and a mystery that had, until now, been purely auditory and visual. What was the connection between the sounds? the lights, and these strange patterns in the sand. Standing in the moonlight, looking at the intricate circles in the sand, Aaron felt a profound sense of awe. This was no longer just a strange encounter. It was evidence, physical proof of something extraordinary. She carefully photographed the markings from every angle, documenting their size and precision. The next day, she returned to the city, her mind racing with questions. She began to research, scouring academic journals, forums, and archives for anything that could explain what she had witnessed. Her search led her to an unexpected field: radio astronomy and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI. It was in a database of unexplained signals that she found it. Declassified record of a narrowband signal detected by a site-affiliated radio telescope years earlier. The signal, designated SHG BO2 +14A, was a source of much debate among scientists. It was a faint, drifting signal, and what made it stand out was its frequency. Erin's blood ran cold when she saw the numbers. When she converted the frequency of the SE signal into an audible sound wave, it was a near-perfect match for the dominant tone she had followed in the desert. The sound that had been recorded in Utah was harmonically linked to a mysterious signal from the direction of the Aries and Pisces constellations. The pieces of the puzzle began to click into place, forming a picture that was both terrifying and magnificent. The whistles in the desert, the voice on her recorder, the guiding lights, the circles in the sand, and now, a documented radio signal from deep space. Was it possible that they were all connected? Could the phenomena in Utah be some kind of terrestrial response or echo to an extraterrestrial signal? Was the desert acting as a giant receiver or perhaps a transmitter? The phrase "follow the tone" took on a whole new meaning. It wasn't just a guide through the desert. It was a guide to a cosmic mystery. Erin's story, which she eventually shared anonymously, raises some of the most profound questions we can ask. Are we alone? And if we're not, how might a communication begin? Perhaps not with a grand announcement, but with a whisper, a tone in the desert, a pattern in the sand, a message hidden in the silence. Grabbing his phone, Thomas rushed outside, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The lights pulsed with colors he'd never seen before, hues that seemed to shift and shimmer outside the normal spectrum. As he got closer, the lights converged on a single spot in the center of the orchard, flared brightly, and then vanished as if they were never there. The silence that followed was deafening. In the spot where the lights had disappeared, something even stranger awaited him. The apples, which had been scattered on the ground just hours before, were now meticulously arranged. They formed a perfect, massive spiral, starting with the smallest apples at the center and spiraling outwards to the largest ones. It was a work of art, precise and deliberate, something that would have taken a team of people hours to create. But who would do this? And why? Thomas tried to film it, to capture this impossible scene, but his phone was dead, not just low on battery, completely fried. Every electronic device he had brought near the site seemed to malfunction. The next day, the community was buzzing. Experts were called in, from local sheriffs to scientists from a nearby university. They came with magnetometers, radiation detectors, and all sorts of high-tech gear. They scanned the ground, analyzed the soil, and documented the apple spiral before it began to decay. But the real mystery lay just beneath the surface. Underneath the center of the spiral, they unearthed a pocket of fused earth, a glassy obsidian-like material that was scorched and smooth. This wasn't ordinary melted sand, like what lightning creates. The scientists took samples back to the lab, subjecting them to every test imaginable, including advanced quantum scanning. The results left them baffled. The molecular structure of the glass defied explanation. It was as if the very laws of physics had been momentarily rewritten in that spot. The material didn't align with any known terrestrial or even meteoric composition. It was, for all intents and purposes, alien. The quiet solitude of the Albanian mountains holds secrets older than the stones themselves. For Adam, a shepherd who knew the peaks and valleys like the lines on his hand, one winter night would shatter everything he thought he knew. It began not with a sound, but with a silence so profound it felt like the world was holding its breath. Then, a light pulsed against the thick, low-hanging clouds. It wasn't the moon, nor was it a star. It was something else entirely. High on the slopes, amidst his flock, Adem looked up. There, suspended in the inky blackness, was a perfect, dark triangle, its form outlined by a faint, otherworldly glow. It was massive, silent, and utterly alien. Asa started mesmerized and terrified. A shimmering figure seemed to descend from the craft. It was tall, slender, and seemed to ripple like heat haze, its form barely coherent. A strange, humming energy washed over the mountainside, and the air grew thick with the smell of ozone, like the aftermath of a lightning strike. Adam, rooted to the spot, watched as this entity moved with an unnatural grace across the snow. Where it passed, the pristine white ground didn't just melt. It sizzled and turned black, as if scorched by an invisible fire. Panic finally broke through his paralysis. He scrambled to gather his flock, his calls echoing unanswered in the unnerving silence. The sheep, usually so responsive, were scattered and terrified. When the light in the sky finally vanished, leaving only the cold starlight behind, Adam discovered the horrifying truth. Several of his sheep were gone. In their place were patches of blackened, scorched snow, the only evidence of the night's impossible visitor. This encounter changed Adam forever. The simple shepherd became an obsessive chronicler of the strange. He began carving what he called quantum talismans from pieces of mountain wood and stone. These weren't traditional good luck charms. They were intricate objects covered in bizarre geometric patterns that seemed to defy logic, with angles and curves that felt both ancient and futuristic. He believed they could somehow disrupt the energy he had felt, a shield against the things that now haunted his skies. He carried them with him always, a desperate attempt to protect himself and what was left of his flock. His journal, once filled with notes about weather and grazing paths, was now a canvas for his fear and fascination. Page after page was filled with detailed sketches of the triangular craft, its strange lights, and the shimmering, indistinct figure. He drew complex diagrams of alien-looking shapes, trying to decipher a language he couldn't possibly know. His entries became more frantic, his handwriting growing wilder. He wrote of a constant feeling of being watched, a persistent hum just at the edge of his hearing. He warned that the sky was no longer just the sky. It was a veil, and something was looking through it, waiting. Adam's story became a local legend, whispered by villagers who saw the change in the once steady shepherd. Was it a hallucination brought on by the isolating cold? Or did he truly witness something from beyond our world? His detailed journal and the strange, scorched patches of earth he pointed to were his only proof. Adam spent the rest of his days with his eyes turned upward, a solitary watchman on the mountain, forever vigilant under a sky he no longer trusted. The shepherd's vigil had begun, a silent testament to a night when the stars looked back. Have you ever been somewhere so quiet, so still, that the silence itself feels loud? That's what Dana thought when she first arrived at her secluded cabin by Mirror Lake in Montana. The water was so clear, it was like a sheet of polished glass, perfectly reflecting the vast, endless sky and the towering pines that guarded its shores. It was supposed to be a peaceful retreat, a place to escape the noise of the world. But some places hold secrets, and some reflections show more than what's really there. The first few days were absolutely blissful. Dana spent her time hiking, reading, and simply breathing in the crisp mountain air. But then, the echoes started. It began subtly. A laugh she let out while skipping a stone across the water came back to her a moment later. But it wasn't quite right. It was her laugh, but colder, sharper. She'd call out hello to the mountains, and the echo that returned would be her own voice, twisted into a mocking tone. She tried to brush it off as a trick of the landscape, a peculiar acoustic anomaly of the valley, but a knot of unease began to tighten in her stomach. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, Dana stood by the water's edge. She looked at her reflection. It looked back, as reflections do. But then, as her own face remained still, her reflection's lips curled into a wide, unnatural smile. It was a predatory grin, full of malice, and it sent a jolt of pure terror through her. She stumbled back, her heart hammering against her ribs. When she dared to look again, the reflection was normal, mirroring her own horrified expression. Was she losing her mind? Was the isolation finally getting to her? That night, sleep offered no escape. She was jolted awake by a voice coming from the old battery-powered radio on her nightstand. It was her own voice, calm and clear, recounting her deepest fears, whispering secrets she had never spoken aloud to anyone. The radio wasn't even plugged in. She scrambled out of bed, grabbed the radio, and hurled it against the wall, smashing it into pieces. The voice stopped, shaking. She huddled in a corner, waiting for the sun to rise, convinced she was no longer alone in the cabin. The next morning, she packed her bags in a frenzy. She had to leave. As she rushed out the door, she glanced one last time at the lake. The sky was clear, the sun was bright, and there was only one moon, a pale sliver barely visible in the morning light. But on the surface of Mirror Lake, the reflection was wrong. It showed a dark, twilight sky, and floating in that watery sky were two full, luminous moons, side by side, like a pair of watching eyes. A cold dread washed over her, a feeling of being watched, of being trapped. She didn't wait to understand. She just ran. When the park rangers came to check on the cabin a week later, alerted by her family, they found it empty. Dana's car was gone, but her belongings were scattered as if she'd left in a great hurry. The smashed radio lay in a corner. Everything seemed ordinary, if a bit messy. But as one of the rangers stood by the shore, he noticed something strange. He looked down at his reflection in the impossibly still water of Mirror Lake, and for a split second, he saw his reflection wave back at him, even though his own arms were firmly at his sides. The lake holds its secrets, and sometimes it keeps what it reflects. Dana was never seen again.